Recording in progress.
Good evening. I'd like to call the meeting of the Carpinteria Valley Water District to order. Can you have the Pledge of Allegiance, please? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Can we do the roll call, please, Bob?
Director Holcomb?
Here.
Director Johnson? Present. Director Roberts is absent. Director Balch? Here. Director Van Weerden?
Yes. Before we start, there's one housekeeping item. We would like to move item number 10, the closed session item, to before item number 7. So if we can have a motion, please.
So moved.
Second.
We got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Director Holcomb?
Yes.
Director Johnson?
Aye.
Director Roberts is absent. Director Balch?
Aye.
Director Van Weerden?
Yes.
Motion passes 4-1.
Okay, item number 3, public forum. Any person may address the board of directors on any matter which is its jurisdiction, which is not on the agenda. Anyone know? Okay. Then we go on to the number 4, consent agenda. I'll just ask first on number 4A, any questions from the board members? And any questions on item number 4B? Item number 4C? And then item number 4D. If there's no questions, I'd like a motion, please.
Move to approve.
Polly seconds.
We got a motion and a second. Any more discussion? Then roll call, please.
Director Holcomb?
Yes.
Director Johnson?
Aye.
Director Roberts is absent. Director Balch?
Aye.
Director Van Weerden?
Yes.
Motion passes 4-1.
Then we got item number 5, unfinished business, none. And here I'm going to adjourn the regular meeting of the Carpinteria Valley Water District and adjourn the regular board meeting of the Carpinteria Groundwater Sustainability Agency. Call the meeting to order. Public forum, any person may address the board of directors on any matter within his jurisdiction which is not on the agenda. None. Consent agenda, item number 3A. Any questions from the board members on 3A? Any questions on 3B? Can we have a motion, please?
Polly makes a motion to approve.
Second.
We got a motion and a second. Any discussion? A roll call, please.
Director Holcomb?
Yes.
Director Johnson?
Aye.
Director Roberts is absent. Director Balch?
Aye.
Director Van Weerden?
Yes.
Motion carries 4-1. I'll wait. Go ahead.
Okay, so unfinished business, none. Then we go to item number 5, new business, 5A. Consider request for refund of GSA fee paid by Simple Avo Casillas Pass LLC from the year 2023 for action. Bob?
Yeah, so this is for action, but because of the limitations of the Joint Powers Authority Agreement, without a unanimous board, this is the first hearing, it would require a unanimous board vote. And so I will present it, but it will be for information only, and then we'll bring it back at a following.
So if Matt would be here, we could vote on
We
it?
could take action if all 5 members were here, but, and we're working on that revision of the Joint Powers Agreement. We just haven't had all of the members sign it yet.
But, so if Matt comes in between now and
Yes.
later, we can come back to it and vote on it?
Yeah,
Tonight.
that would work
Good,
too.
thank you.
So somebody wants to text Matt, make sure that...
I did, I haven't heard back from him yet.
Okay, thank you. All right, so go ahead, Bob.
Yes, thank you. Put my faraway glasses on. So, as you recall, there's a process in place for GSA fees that landowners can file a request for review of the fee if it doesn't apply to them. There are a number of exceptions outlined in the ordinances that we adopted subsequent to, the resolutions that we adopted subsequent to the fee adoption. The one that's probably been used the most is there's an exception for Ventura County properties because they don't receive Carpinteria Valley Water District water, which has groundwater in it. If they can show that either they don't have a well where we assume that they had a well, or they can show that the water was sufficient from Casitas Water District, which involved supplying Casitas water bills to show that the water came from that water district. That's an exemption, and we waive the fee. There is a stipulation in both of the resolutions that we adopted, and those are, let me give you the numbers here. Resolution 17 and 27. Both of those are, 29. Both of those have sections in them that limit the amount of time after the fee has been paid for a request for review. And that essentially is 30 days after the payment of the final payment of the tax bill, which is typically in April, May. So it would land kind of on the end of the fiscal year where they're no longer able to apply for review. This landowner applied for review in fiscal year 24, kind of right in between the two payments, but included fiscal year 23's fee in the request for review. We reviewed it and got back to the landowner and said, we approve your fiscal year 24 protest or case in which we would refund the fees. And unfortunately, for fiscal year 23, it's too late. So they were about 9 or 7 months past the end of the fiscal year 23. We notified them that they did have the option to take it to the board, and that's kind of what we're doing today. So they issued a letter. The letter is in your packet. It kind of goes through the details from their perspective. And staff's concern about these types of late requests for review is the fiscal year has passed. That money has been received by the county and used in the budget, in the GSA budget. And so the limitation was put there for a purpose. We don't want to go back multiple years and have to review multiple protests or requests for review that the fee doesn't apply to them. Our biggest concern is if we do it for one, then we have to open it up for everyone.
What happens if someone's late paying their tax bill? Was that 6 months from when they pay it? Is that what you said earlier?
That's the wording in the resolution, yeah. The resolution for this process is the next item on the agenda, and we'll talk about kind of the number of days after. We actually have increased the number of days after to 90 days just because there's been some, claim of unfairness. 30 days is too short.
So if I were delinquent 2 years, I could go back 2 years?
Yeah, in the technical, if you were a lawyer, I think you could argue that was the case, and we can look at that wording as well and make adjustments to that.
Thanks.
Any other questions?
Are we gonna,
Well,
I can see both sides. The way I feel about it is that this is so new, number one. Number two, on the other hand, so I can understand them going back to see can they get 2023. And again, we haven't been at this very long. But at the same time, I can also understand staff's concern that all of this has been publicly put out there now for a long, long time. So I can understand both sides. When I read this, even though I've supported staff, I don't know, 90% of the time since I've been here, I could also understand this whole situation being so new to us and so new to the community that I could see granting them 2023 too. But again, I do understand the efforts we have all gone to get this out there over and over and over again. But to Casey's point, I could see extending it from 30 to 90 days too, because that seems short. So I had some sympathy for the landowner on this.
Oh, we have sympathy, but I think it's a matter of, setting some limits. Even
No, I know.
Even the Government Claims Act is a year-long limitation, so.
Okay, and this is for information only. Is there
For now.
someone here from Sympatica or no?
No.
And they're online or?
No, I was just going to say that I heard back from Director Roberts, and he's out of the country, so he won't be in today.
Oh, okay. That's
Well,
fine.
we're definitely gonna save it for next time then.
Yeah.
Any questions on this, Shirley?
No.
Okay, because, Bob, you say you're gonna clean this up in the next item? Is that what you're telling us?
Well, we were going to adopt the resolution that defines the process of how to request an administrative review, or in this case, a board review of the fee. So we saw this last time, last GSA meeting, so it's back for action this meeting. So we can't take action on this because it's a second hearing, and according to the Joint Powers Agreement, if it's a second hearing, you don't need a unanimous board. If it's your desire to continue to work on this, I don't think it'll cause any issue.
Well, personally, and I think there's other growers here that did go to the appeals process, so I support your recommendations, and I'm not prepared to do the refund.
Yeah, we're not taking action on that
I
today,
understand
but,
that,
yeah.
But I want to know how you feel. Good.
Yeah,
Good.
how about you guys?
Yeah, I mean, it's tough, right? Like, it was several notices, and then it's clearly outlined on your tax bill. And they saw it the second time around. I mean, I do also appreciate your point of it's new, and people are, kind of figuring it out, but,
Right.
inattention to a tax bill is kind of tough to work around.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the timing is tight, at least how it was now, and it looks like we're opening that up a little bit. I mean, everybody's really busy, and I could see how 30 days is pretty
Right.
tough. And then the interesting part of if I'm delinquent and then pay that 5 years down the road, then I could, in theory,
Sure.
protest 5 years worth of
We
fees.
could change that language in the resolution to read something like, at the scheduled
due
last
date or-
payment, yeah.
Yeah, it's an interesting one for sure.
And we're tweaking this as we go along, so, okay.
Right, but we had other property owners that were here.
No, I
and-
agree,
and-
I
and-
agree,
And went to
yeah,
the,
I
like, I think
absolutely-
Scott did, so
I take it.
Go ahead.
I completely agree.
speak up, Scott, we want to hear it all. You go.
Go ahead and hit the microphone button.
Here. Yeah, Scott Vanderkar. I did read through this on the agenda and the information sent out, and it did catch my eye. And I agree with the comments having been made. It points to one of those curiosities that I've had as to how much people pay attention to or don't pay attention to their property tax bills. I've had several people in smaller amounts than this $2,000, but that I'll bring it up and they'll say, oh, I didn't even notice it. And I'm curious in this case, if that was the case here, just as a way to explain how people don't seem to be paying much attention. The other thing that comes to mind is, if you were to make an exception, would you have a run on others coming forward trying to go back once they find out that they didn't pay attention the first time around? Curiosity. Thank you.
Thanks,
Yeah.
Scott. But also, the district did send out plenty of notices, and I did get phone calls on those notices, so people were paying attention to our
Exactly.
notices, so.
Yeah. Okay.
All right, we'll save it for next time when
All
Matt's
good,
back.
all
So
good.
it is, so Bob, you want to go to item number 5B, consider resolutions number 034, establishing a fee variance process for assessed for the year 25, the Carpinteria, groundwater sustainability agency fees. They'll be for information only, so it is.
No. We can actually take action on this. We saw this at the last GSA.
Okay,
So it's a second hearing according to the JPA. We can take action on a second hearing without a unanimous vote.
sounds good, so go ahead.
Okay, so we're already sort of warmed up on this issue. With every approved change in the fee for the GSA, we also accompany that with a fee dispute review and appeal process. And so that's been done by resolution for the last 2 years. Basis of contesting has not changed from the past 2 years. It's a mismatch between, one of three things, mismatch between anticipated and actual crops. So meaning our aerial photo was off or our measurement was off based on the actual crops on the ground. Or evidence of reduced groundwater extraction or no wells. So in many cases, we tried to capture all these in the initial pumping estimates where we sent out maps of everyone's property to the property owner and asked them to verify that the information was correct. But of course, mail gets piled up and not looked at. And so there were a number of parcels that didn't respond. And so in that case, if there is evidence that, our calculation is off or there's no well, then they have the option to come back in this process and protest or ask for a review, that is. And then other credible evidence showing the fee is disproportionate or inequitable. And this kind of captures the Ventura County area because one of the ideas behind the fee is that in Carpinteria Valley Water District does serve groundwater, and so that kind of is a benefit to a lot of parcels. So in Ventura County, we don't serve any water to those customers because they're served by Casillas Water. So that's sort of that other basis for contesting the charge. If they don't have a well, for example, or if they don't have the crop, they don't use groundwater for the crops, they use Casillas water. We don't have a way of telling if they have been using Casillas water or some other water unless they provide us evidence like water bills from Casillas. So the procedure for the request is currently written as they pay the fee under protest. And so there are typically in these tax bills, you pay 2 payments, one in November-ish and one in April. And so the 90, and then submit a request within 90 days of payment. So that 90 days of payment is really meant to be anywhere from the November payment all the way to 90 days from the April payment. We can reword that such that we say 90 days, I guess we would have to modify the pay the fee under protest because they wouldn't have paid the fee. Well, no, I guess we wouldn't have to. We could say pay the fee under protest because we don't want to go into a review if someone's delinquent on their taxes. So we could modify that second item, submit request within 90 days of the scheduled payment for that fiscal year. The third item is, third step is meet with the director of the GSA to discuss the basis of the request within 30 days. So once we receive the request, the GSA will schedule that meeting. It can be anything from a phone call to a field visit. There may be subsequent visits after that. And then once the determination is made of the review, the property owner will be notified within 15 days. So if the property owner doesn't like the administrative review results, they can take it to the board, and that's kind of what the last item was they didn't like our administrative review decision, and so they brought it to the board. So if they do bring it to the board, or if they do want to bring it to the board, they have to file an appeal within 15 days of the executive director's decision. Again, we can change that amount of days, but and then the appeal has to be placed on the agenda within 45 days of the receipt of the letter or notification that they'd like to appeal it to the board. Board may grant partial grant or deny the appeal. They may partially grant or deny the appeal, meaning they can decide whether in part or in whole they want to approve the appeal or they just deny it. And then the decision is final once the board makes that determination. So this is a resolution 34, and so we can either approve it today, or we can go back and work on it more, or we can approve it with changes today. The language, the resolution is in your packet, so if you have specific changes that you're thinking about, we can do it today. Otherwise, we can take it back and work on it further.
I'm fine with approving it as long as you're willing to make those changes.
I have a couple of questions. On 2.3, it establishes the 90 days following timely payment. And then about halfway down, right after the one with a colon, says it has to be mailed within 30 days after payment. So I think that's just a typo, I think. And then it also calls out that it shall be considered timely filed if on or before the 30th day following payment. So 2.3, about halfway down, 30th is written out, and then down another 2 lines, 30th is numerical. I assume they're all 90?
Yeah, we were attempting to try to make them all 90.
Yeah, and then I think 2.2, in the requirement that it is first timely paid, eliminates delinquent accounts, but also I think limits somebody who is delinquent from ever filing a claim. Was this, if they don't pay it timely, then they can never file for an adjustment?
That's how I read it, yeah.
Okay. So, okay, that's interesting. And then, I guess, just part of the options for review, could it be, I guess it's unique because of this last review that we just did, but could that be, I know that it's unlikely that they will become that they will use basin water, but could that be applied in a future, like, credit to that APN? Like, is that another option instead of, like, refunding cash? If, like, hey, you know what, it was a mistake, you know, it's, that money's been spent or whatever it is, whatever the circumstances are, could it be applied as a future credit to, like, an APN, like, assigned to that, you know?
So if we do a review and evidence is presented to us that there is no well, which is mostly the case, we generally would then assume on into the future that there's no well. You know, we would do periodic reviews to verify, okay, there's a new well there now. Unfortunately, there was a mechanism for us to be notified when there's a new well permit, and we're working on that. But the the executive order of the state to require a verification letter from the GSA has been rescinded, so there's no longer that mechanism. So now we have to come up with a way to make sure that we're coordinated with the counties to let us know when there's a permit being pulled for a new well. Assuming we get that done and in place, once we review a parcel, determine it has no well, then we wouldn't continue to assess that parcel because we would think there's no well until evidence came along that indicated that there was a new well. So as far as a credit goes, I'm not sure how that would work.
Yeah. Thanks.
So, on the 45-day, I was just thinking, we don't have a full board tonight, and we won't at the next meeting next month, so does that, if, it says it can be placed on the agenda, but we might not be able to vote on it if we don't have a full board, is that right? Or we
Yeah, I think the requirement is just that it be placed on the agenda within
Okay,
45
so
days.
if we say, oops, somebody's missing tonight, and somebody's missing 2 weeks from now,
Yeah, it'll just come back as old business.
it'll just come back, and we're not delinquent in the time frame in terms of approving it. Okay,
That's my
Thanks.
understanding. Yeah.
okay.
Okay, so, but, go ahead, Shirley.
Yeah, I think that however clear it can be, as clear as possible, because it wasn't clear on the presentation on the screen, is that, all claims have to be, paid on time to, to the county or county taxes before they're considered. And I also had a question on our copy here, 2.1. One of the variances, number A, that there is a deviation between anticipated and actual crops grown on the property in question. That, speaking of crops, that seems kind of, I don't know how that's applied realistically or in real life, because it sounds like you're going into the weeds there as far as anticipated and actual crops. How do you know what's anticipated in somebody's head? And it just seems like it's hard to prove one way or the other, or am I not understanding?
Yeah, so they have to present evidence. So evidence would be, maybe they have a meter. They may have records of other water supplies, like some of the parcels in Ventura County get water from a.
No, that's not my question. This one is, it's like their crops change, nothing about where they're getting the water,
This is.
right? Am I understanding that right?
Yeah, which
2.1, on packet page 8, and it's the issues that you can bring up for a variance, and there is a deviation between anticipated and actual crops grown on the property. It sounds like the water district is the kind of the going to each farm, or the police department on what you're growing and where, and it just, I don't know how that's doable, but I might not be understanding it correctly.
So it's 2.1, and then the small
A,
a.
yeah.
And Shirley's point, it's a good one, is that I think also the word anticipate, like, how
think I
could
have
you
the wrong
anticipate?
packet
How
or
could that be
something, yeah.
anticipated?
This must
But
be.
they
an old
fill
packet.
out a form?
Yeah.
But still, it's
a
gotta be
strange-
some kind of a gross difference, just not worded like that. Even if you were to make judicial judgments on what people are growing when.
Yeah, so this is a situation, because we gather the crop acreages via aerial photo. So anticipated is referring to what we believe the acreage of a particular crop. So we have an aerial photo, we look at it and we say, these are like all of these other avocados, like, it's 10 acres. These over here are cherimoyas, and they're 3 acres. If we looked at that aerial photo, and let's say the aerial photo was out of date or something changed between the time the aerial photo was taken and the time we analyzed it, or even, maybe there was something, if we're basing it on a prior year and they ripped out all those avocados and planted cherimoyas in the period of time that we're analyzing, that would be a basis for us to say, okay, our aerial photo is not representing what's actually out on the ground.
Well, it needs to be worded better, maybe. There's a deviation between crops inventory and actual crops for that year, or something like that.
Yeah, the word anticipated is not a very good word to describe that process.
Yeah, or bill, what was
Estimated.
charged,
Estimated, yeah.
actually, what it was charged and what it actually was. And I would even say maybe major difference, but then how do you qualify major? Because if it's just a little variance, I mean, you can't be, the district can't be responsible for,
The
you know,
GSA,
every
yeah.
tree grown. It could be better worded. Maybe legal can help us with that.
If it read, basis A, there is a deviation between the estimated and actual crop acreages grown on the property in question.
I guess so, that's better, and better than estimated, district estimated.
A GSA, yeah, GSA.
Yeah,
And
GSA
GSA
estimated.
estimated, yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, that would be better.
Okay, we're good, Shirley?
Yeah.
Okay, Bob, since this is the second reading, we can have it in our next meeting. You can make the changes, and we're allowed to do that in the second reading?
Yeah, if you want to wait till the next meeting, we can bring it back with those changes.
Yeah, I would suggest make the changes, and then we'll, but even in the next meeting, if there's only 4 of us, we can still get it approved,
Yes.
okay? Then we'll move on.
Would you take a comment on that?
Go for it, Scott.
Particularly on the 90-day start date, because it seems to be floating all over the place. My recollection and experience is the property tax that I get in the fall, have 2 coupons, one to pay that's due December 10th or very close to December 10th, and the second one that's April 10th. I would think that due date, that first due date, would be a good starting point for the 90 days. The GSA charges on both of those coupons, but the first one that comes in the fall has the GSA fee on it. So that due date is December 10th or thereabouts. If the 90 days just plain old started there, and it would fit in before the end of the fiscal year too, but that would be my possible suggestion.
Bob, you're in charge. Thank you. Then we go on to item number 6, Executive Director's Report, financials. Bob?
I'll let Norma
Yeah, they're
do
in for
that.
information if there's any questions on them. Yeah.
If there are no questions, Shirley?
No?
Polly?
Yep.
Then we're adjourned on the Groundwater Sustainability Agency meeting. So for everybody's information, we're going to have a closed session item right now. So for anybody in the audience, it might take 5 minutes, it might take 15, 20 minutes before we're back. So does everybody knows. So we're back into session for the regular meeting for the Carpinteria Valley Water District, and we're going to go into a closed session. The closed session item is number 10, conference with labor negotiator pursuant to Government Code Section 54957.6. District negotiator Jeff Dinkin, employee organization SEIU Local 620.
Recording stopped.
Sorry, we need to
They're
go
coming
for-
back, yeah. Sorry about that.
We're on? Sorry, we're back in open session. There's no reportable action. Then we start on item number 7A, consider update on strategic planning process for information and a presentation by Mesa.
Yes, so we've been, as you know, working on the strategic plan, and Meso's here to give an update on where we're at.
Evening, everyone. So Bob, if you'll go to the first slide.
Oh, you can use the clicker there.
Oh, right,
Should
you
be-
told me that.
Should work. There you go.
Great. So as you all know, we've been working on developing a strategic plan for the district. And you've all been involved in this process, and I want to give you an update on where we are now. So this slide just recaps the steps that we've taken to get where we are. So you were all involved in the process where we conducted interviews with your board members as well as managers at the district to gather input from everyone. We also gave the staff an opportunity to anonymously provide feedback. And then we went through a process of synthesizing all those responses and drawing out themes. And then we asked for feedback on those themes to identify what's most important and what should be in the plan. So we went through a prioritization process with the managers, and we also did a dot voting exercise with the staff. So all levels were able to provide input on what the content of the plan should be, and that's how we got to what is in the plan now. So we have a draft of the plan that is included in the packet for your review. It's not finalized yet. This is just a draft at this moment. The draft of the plan has both written content as well as these visual aids that I'm referring to as results chains. And they might be something new, so I just wanted to give you a little bit of guidance on how to interpret them in case you were having any questions. So in the packet, you'll see within the strategic plan that we have these long-term goals that we identify. So there's a page of the strategic plan that outlines what those goals are, and then for the actions within the next 5 years, which is the time horizon of the plan, we have actions related to each of those goals. So these results chains, you essentially read from left to right. So we have on the left the strategies that support the goal, and then the blue boxes are essentially the results that we achieved that show that we're making progress to that goal. And a couple things to note here are that the goals are intended to be long-term, so they're phrased in a way that's they're phrased in a way that's relevant now, but they are unlikely to change or be achieved within 5 years. They will likely take longer than that. And the strategies on the left, those orange boxes, we have identified a couple possible strategies within the plan, but these are not intended to represent the action that we've decided to take or that managers have incorporated into their plans or anything like that. These are just potential actions that we've listed that have been mentioned as relevant ideas. And then the first set of blue rectangles after the strategies, those are where we really want to focus for the next 5 years. So those would be the first set of results that we would see if we were making progress to our long-term goals. So those objectives are really the heart of this plan and what we would incorporate going forward. And then any blue boxes to the right of that are subsequent results we will hopefully achieve over time to continue to make progress towards that long-term goal, but they are not necessarily going to be achieved within the next 5 years. So they would be outside the immediate time horizon of this plan. So it's really those objectives within the next 5 years, that immediate, the left-hand most column of blue boxes that we're focusing on for this. And just as an example, so you'll see many of these within the plan, and I've put a red box there around the set of blue boxes that you really want to focus on, just so that's clear. So for finalizing the document, we need to add graphics. Right now, it's, we have not taken the time to polish it. We're also going to do final text edits, and then of course we'll provide you a copy of the finalized document. And one thing that you'll see in the document is talking about how to incorporate this going forward. So after we provide you the final document, the intent is that we will actually use the information in this plan so that managers will incorporate it into their decision making. We could incorporate it into staff meetings, and we could give report outs on progress to you. So the final copy at the 1023 meeting is not supposed to be the end of this plan or the content within it. That is just finalization of the document, and then hopefully we will actually use the plan going forward as it is intended to be a decision-making tool. That is really all I have on the strategic plan, if there are any questions.
Yeah, I have some questions or suggestions as well. And thank you, this looks very organized. And I'm not quite sure, what the whole picture is or where it's going. I will say that it seems like something, plan like this, this, a water district or utility, especially the water district, is so technical. And oftentimes we look at a report and you delve into a report or a strategy about something or other, and then you'll see it again 8 months later. And, it's not a feeling like, oh, we left off here and now here we go. It's like a whole new thing. And just from a board member's perspective. So I'm seeing that this could probably be very good, to get some continuity going. And I know, Bob is planning for what can I do to make sure, stabilize the district for when I'm retired, So that's appreciated. And I would make a comment that, and there is repetition here, but I'm just, kind of not used to the format, or, where I think you stated, and then you restated, and then you went to a different thing. But also, we need to keep in mind also that the size of our water district, we're 16 million sales, about 16 million overhead and payments. That's not huge. I mean, if you're huge, you're going to really do some heavy lifting into all this data. But so I would keep that in mind, that it's suiting our size. We can't overplan. And there were several notes I made. There's no way to plan on this. Third parties and what they're going to charge. We have to be ready for this, and especially the DWR. And that's the first thing I learned when I was looking into the water district, is that, and the Central Coast Water Authority is the big part of our expenditures are third parties that, we'll say right outside, we have no control over these things, So that's another thing, but it seems like you had some reoccurring themes, which I think is very good, including, I wrote notes, easy tech, easy tech, easy tech. Get advanced on tech, but make it easy, make it swift. So, that I can appreciate. And I had two other points. One is, how do you create a pipeline of possible candidates for people you haven't fired yet, or new positions you haven't made yet? Can you explain that? Is that something to do with colleges or education, or how do you get a pipeline?
It could be. So I think that would be addressed in those strategy boxes, the orange boxes, which are not yet defined. So a lot of these things we've identified as things we want to achieve, but we haven't identified exactly how we go about doing that. And my interpretation would be that would be up for the managers to decide at the right time as they choose to incorporate those objectives into their daily, monthly, weekly decision-making.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I can kind of address that side of things in the early discussions about things that we can do to improve the pipeline. Things like going to job fairs at high schools and colleges, advertising in those venues to make people aware that there are career paths at water districts.
Okay, yeah, okay, yeah, because I thought, what the heck, do you interview people, but then they're gonna take another job by the time you want your pipeline to come through. But, okay, that's good strategy. And the other thing I'd like to, I don't know how it would enter into this, but, they're very real, and I just can't think of any other way to address these strategies and issues other than managers meeting together, is that, and what I see in the overall picture is that as things develop, maybe we should make it a priority to try to get free of state water expenses and how that whole mechanism works, and be more local and be more self-sufficient, and maybe have a goal of totally local controlled water supply, like say for maybe for 10 years even, or something like that. Because if we have, like, we use 3,600 acre feet a year of water, and we have all this storage space in Kachuma, maybe a goal would be, if the whole state blew up or all this kind of stuff, that we would be self-sufficient and have some, that's what LA Metro does. They say, we want to have 4 years water storage capabilities. Of course, they had the big money to throw at that, but, so that goal would be somewhere within this plan structure, huh? Because that's I don't know how you can plan, employees and stuff aside from that, but most everything else, and then how can we, because if we had that asset, we would also be influencing our neighbors, and it would be very, because when we needed maybe state water, we could go through them. And then if the drought gets really bad and Kachuma's, getting dangerously low, we can say, you can buy our Kachuma, allocation. We'll put less pressure on that. And and then if we need water from the state, then we could buy through them or something. So I think it's that's kind of it's the gorilla in the room as far as state water and what a big expense it is, and what can we do about it? And sometimes you have to go, can't do anything about that unless we get out, or we can, or not. But anyway, I think that was the question I had, and I think that was the only made the pipeline and operating procedures. And cater control, we have no control over cater. You've got all these things in here. But thank you very much on that. I think it's a step in the right direction, especially if we can get the right software that's effective and simple and works easy.
All right.
I just wanted to say, good structure and good discipline. You just could see it throughout the document. So it's a very, very good step, and well done. Thank you.
Thank you. So that's it for item number 7A. We move on to item 7B. Consider California Water Data Summit presentation on process automation for information. Bob and Mason.
One of the challenges that MESO was assigned and she has been working on since she's been with the district is the data flow that comes into the district is very different forms, very inconsistent in quality and how we get it, the format and how we get it. And so one of the things that she's been working on is trying to figure out how do we automate some of these processes of pulling in this data, putting it in the form we need, utilizing the data as information, and then storing the data. She gave a presentation at the California Water Data Summit, and so today she'll give you just a summary of that presentation.
Yeah, I'll give you a slightly different version of this presentation than I made, since that was for, an audience of people who also want to dive into the technical details. Also, this presentation I think I gave a month ago now, so it's not, quite as polished as it was when I gave it there, but it was well received at the time. So the thing that I really want to talk about today is that, as you all know, the district needs reliable information for budgeting, for planning, for decision-making, for forecasting supply. And it can be really difficult to do that when you have these disparate sources and you are relying on doing a lot of manual data entry, which can lead to errors, and it's definitely inefficient. However, finding a way to modify and modernize that can be really difficult when you have limited staff time and resources. I've been exploring a solution using Microsoft's Power Platform, which seems to be pretty promising. So that's the solution I'm going to go through with you, although the ideas that we're applying here about automating these data collection, wrangling processes definitely can be applied through other softwares. But I think the solution that makes the most sense for the district right now is Microsoft's Power Platform. So that's what we're going to be talking about. So as I mentioned, I'm sure you guys have all heard about, the district has to comply with all these state reports, some monthly, some annually, some at 5-year increments. So there's things like the electronic annual report, which is an annual report. We have internal reports that we update regularly, like our water supply report. We need to be able to answer questions like, what is our allocation from our different water supply sources? How much of it do we have left? Where is it? How much groundwater have we pumped? Is our customer sales on trend based on what we've budgeted? So we need to be able to answer these questions internally as well as externally, and that can be difficult to do. The way that we currently do that is through this spreadsheet, which I inherited when I started. And what's really difficult about this is that there's not documentation of where these data come from or how they're modified, so that when this is passed from person to person, that can be an opportunity to introduce error or inconsistencies. And then also just from month to month when this is updated, we have to go to several different sources, say 5 different data sources, and take the data from that source and then manually enter it in here, and oftentimes do some modifications to the numbers as well. And so that has been a reasonable solution in the past when these automation tools didn't exist or weren't easy to use, maybe need a software engineer for them. But now this is, potentially a source of error and time consuming that might not be necessary anymore. And so just to sort of recap, the problem that I was seeing was, lack of documentation, potential user error, definitely time consuming. And then as I was thinking about how can we address this, there's things to notice, like we get the same data sources from the same sources each month, and they're formatted in the same way. So when thinking about how can we make this more efficient, how can we automate this, that consistency is a huge bonus and can really play into these different automation options. So that's a really important feature to recognize and consider. And so essentially what I want to do is, rather than be going to each of those individual data sources and manually entering them, I want that to happen automatically. And then I also want calculations done automatically. I want the data aggregated automatically, and I want the visuals refreshed automatically. So that's where we're trying to go here. So of course, when I started this, I called up my friends at other districts and I asked them what they're doing, because I figured we're a very small district. Those maybe other small districts, but also medium districts and larger districts, they must have a solution, right? So I figured I don't need to reinvent the wheel. Maybe I can just learn from what the other districts are doing. And I was really surprised. There are, the really large, well-funded districts do have a couple data scientists on hand who are using different softwares to do this, but for the most part, everyone's using these spreadsheets and basically doing the same thing that we were. And I was pretty surprised by that. Granted, I had these conversations 2 years ago, so it's possible that's changed. However, when I gave this presentation about a month ago, it was very well received, and I definitely got the impression that people felt like this was useful information to them when I presented the solution that we've been working on. So I think it's probably true that for the most part, people are still using spreadsheets the same way that we were, which isn't surprising considering I've been working on this basically my entire time at the district. And it's still an ongoing effort because it does take a lot of time and effort, and it is a learning process. Especially as Microsoft is simultaneously evolving their tools. So both surprising and not surprising that everyone's basically doing the same thing that we've been doing. And so, that's interesting. I had this in a wider format, and it looks like as it got squished, some things got changed a little bit. Hopefully that doesn't affect the rest of the slides. So I'm going to use our water supply report as an example for how to go through this automation process, how to apply the different tools. Although, as I mentioned before, we could apply this for our consumer confidence report. We could apply this for basically anything where we're getting regular data sources and we want them to be in a regular output. So there's many applications to this, but I'm going to use water supply report since that's what we're referencing each month and would be really helpful to have done more efficiently. So for that report, one of those many data sources I get is an email from COMB with a bunch of PDFs attached. And so normally we'd have to manually download those emails and then look at them and take the information out. But Microsoft has this nice feature called Power Automate. And I've just shown a little snip here of essentially what this can do. So this has different application outside of email. However, I've found email is a really useful application of this tool. And essentially what this does is I tell it every time I get an email from COMB with attachments and these keywords, download each of those PDFs in a separate folder. So then each month I'm accumulating those PDFs, each one in a separate folder, and I don't have to do that manually anymore. I also want to mention that was the online version of this tool. There's also a desktop application, so I can also tell this, hey, go to a website, click on a link there, and download our state water project allocation every month. So I don't have to go manually grab that. It'll always be downloading, so we'll always have the most recent allocation on hand. And these are both easy to learn. There's no learning curve, but you don't need any sort of software engineering or even data analysis background. These are very user-friendly tools. So with that PDF from COMB, this is the format that it's in, and the problem here is that this is not in what Microsoft would recognize as a table. So a table would be one row of headers and then however many rows. And this, as you can see, essentially has 3 different tables within it, which I've highlighted in those red boxes. And what that means is that after I download the data, to be able to recognize it in like an Excel sheet, for example, and then aggregate across multiple months, because remember, I'm getting a new version of this PDF each month, I need to change this into a table format so that then I can add up different rows or different cells. And so there's 2 ways to do that. One is I can use Microsoft's tools to do a bunch of wrangling, which is essentially like moving different columns and rows around. Or I can go to the source and ask COMB to send me this information in a table format. Both are valid options. However, in this particular case, I was able to ask COMB to send me an Excel file instead. What's really nice is that reduces the chance for error, because each one of those steps where you're telling the software to reformat that data is an opportunity where if something changes, it might not recognize that transformation anymore. However, this also has potential concerns associated with it in that we're asking a partner to not just do a one-time change or one-time exercise, but to change their practices. So now the person at COMB has to send me this every single month, and I'm relying on them to send it to me every month, or this process won't work. because I'm now looking for this as my input rather than those PDFs. And there's different redundancies we can add in there, like I have an automated email reminder and I'm in communication with this person, but all of these have their different pros and cons.
But would the other water districts benefit from the same new format?
Yes, and that is something,
So it wouldn't be like we'd be a one-off, or he'd be doing something special for us?
no.
with you?
Well, right now he is. However, absolutely the other water districts could use this, and not just COMB, but CCWA, I think actually the next step I would like to do is work with them, because I think that if we can move this to essentially a regional application where the data is being presented at the regional level, so everyone who needs that data can get it in this Excel format, that would benefit everyone. That is the direction I would like to go. Absolutely. Another thing I'll mention is that rather than doing that wrangling I was talking about, sometimes our information is not even in a PDF or Excel sheet. Sometimes we get it through pictures. So every month we need to collect our boundary read, and we get that through a picture. And as you can see, that picture has a lot of glare on it. So Microsoft does actually have tools which will try and recognize text in a picture. However, it's not nearly accurate or consistent enough to use that here. However, that doesn't mean there's no solution. The thing that we are currently working on is just developing a little app, which is actually very simple to do. So the person in the field, they could still collect a picture through that app. They can also just manually input the information right in the app. And considering in this case, it's only 2 different data fields, basically, the east and west flow, that seems like a reasonable ask and a reasonable change in procedure. And that means that you already have the number in a format a data sheet will recognize, and you can just pull it into the rest of your information rather than having to go look at that picture and manually enter it. So there's many different solutions that we're implementing here. And essentially what we get is through this Microsoft tool, Power BI, we get this data set. So now we're actually in a data table format. We've taken those PDFs, we've aggregated them together, we've wrangled them, and we now can use this to pull out trends, to create visuals, to actually make decisions. However, we have to add in a step telling us to refresh too, because remember, we want this to be updating on its own every month when it recognizes that new data coming in. So we've essentially gone from this old manual entry data spreadsheet to this new data table that updates itself that lives in Microsoft's Power BI. And there's a couple different ways we can then use the information from there. So the primary way I've been using it so far is these reports where you can create these really nice drag and drop visuals. I can put filters on them where I can change between water year, fiscal year, and calendar year just by clicking a button. I can select what years I want. It makes it so that you can visualize the information and change the information, filter it really easily. So that report format's going to have more detail. That's probably something I would work on. Might be something I'd share with Bob or Norma, and they could work on. However, we can also use this subscribe to report feature. So I've been using this to send COMB our information each month. So they need from us the percentage of agricultural versus M&I water use every month. And this happens in a completely automated way. I don't have to do anything. I just check the email with this attachment and it goes to COMB by itself. So this is based on the water sales data that our front office sends around to everyone. When I receive that, this automatically runs, updates itself, and then sends itself to COMB. So this is great if you want to share a static report, either externally or internally. Other things that we could do is potentially at board meetings going forward, we could share the report and be able to click through in real time. We could also share a dashboard feature where you don't have all those filter capabilities, but you can see essentially snippets from a lot of different places aggregated in one dashboard. So if we knew we wanted the same information each month, we could use it that way. So there's many different ways in which we can display this information and then use it for internal decision making. We can create tables, which we could share with. I could share with our conservation person when she needs to fill out those state reports. If she had access to this, she could just select those filters at the top based on what she needed, and then have the data she needs for her report. We could do the same thing with our financial reports. There's a lot of different applications of this. That's pretty much it. It's still a work in progress at this point. There's parts of it which work, but then little details that I haven't resolved yet, like with the CCWA information, the way they structure their data currently is too inconsistent for any of these formats to work. So I need to work with them to do something similar to what we did with Comb, where they provide the data in a different format, and then it could be added into here, and then it would be, we'd essentially have the entire monthly water supply report in this format. Right now, that's just the missing piece that's been holding it up for a while. But that's what I've been working on for a while.
You got any comments?
Well, it's a lot of work, and what we're it kind of dovetails into some of the priorities in the strategic plan, which are trying to leverage technology to help us be more efficient. The workload keeps increasing, and so we have to manage that through different measures, and one of them is efficiency.
I just also think it's neat that, so you spoke at San Diego, whatever it was, a month ago, and you were here a month ago reporting on another conference that you went to. I think it was on GIS or something to do with GIS. And so we're seeing more. It's nice to see staff out there and explaining what we're doing, and then getting feedback from other partners too. And so it's always a good thing.
Casey?
That's amazing work. Super good job for sure. Is there any file type that you found easier to manipulate? Like, would you rather get just straight CSVs from everybody, or
Oh yeah, that would make life so easy.
right?
Yeah.
It's funny because these agencies are investing time to, put it in a table or make some report that they think looks good, and just straight CSV now would be
Yeah.
such a better way to go. Yeah, great. Thank you.
Shirley?
Yeah, thank you very much, and I agree with Polly as far as reaching out. And, and I think with automatic data, and you've got your eye on it, I don't know how easy it would be to drill down and like a dinosaur and find out where these numbers came from, because if one thing gets wrong, then it, passes down. So I hope it has the ability to do that, and that'd be great.
Impressive. So you're asking these agencies to maybe rethink how they give us their information, or at least ask for it and see what they got to say for themselves?
I think it's useful. This is making the case, right, that there is this huge efficiency improvement, and there is this end-use application of those agencies taking the time to change how they give us information, because it's less of an ask for Comb and the person I know there who, they already have a spreadsheet that they're just slightly manipulating to give us this information. I suspect at CCWA it would be a larger ask. So I think this is sort of a proof of use. This is a test case we can show them and say this would be a huge benefit to Carpinteria and then all the other districts who receive that information as well.
Absolutely.
But also, if Elijah thinks it's better what you have suggested, could he ask the other member units if he could send it the same way, and that would then be easier for him too.
Yeah.
All right, thank you, everyone. Then we move on to item number 7C. Consider proposed identification method and outreach plan for information. Bob and Mesa.
Yeah, so we've been working on the intensification program, which is a program to make sure that when property or land is intensified in the district, that we're able to capture the impact on water supply. And so we're at a point where we have a plan, and we want to start doing outreach. So Mesa is going to report on that.
I know there are a lot of documents in your packet, so we're going to go through more of how to review those documents, and I'll highlight a couple of key pieces from them. We do not need to go through them all in detail. So the slide that I have here, this table is also within your packet, and I think this is the way to really guide us through all this information. So just backing up for a minute, the new information here is primarily the intensification methodology. That's what we're really going to be focusing on for the next few months so that we can get intensification methods adopted and then look into the intensification fee after that. However, the intensification is closely related and integrated with the allocation policy that we already adopted. And as we evolve the intensification, we're seeing updates to the allocation policy that we need as well. So that's why we are including both pieces of information here and why it's so much content. So I think that we start at the top here and go sequentially, and those numbers highlighted in yellow on the left correspond to the documents in the packet, and then also I'm sure you saw there's that website document with the little yellow circles. Those correspond to these as well. So you can see not only what documents this information is contained in, but then how we would integrate it on our website as well. So the first thing I think we should talk about is revisions to the allocation program. So we've already adopted methodology and an ordinance with that methodology for our allocation program. However, if you remember, our commercial, industrial, institutional, and agricultural accounts, their allocations are based on their historical use. So at this point, our methodology that's been adopted says if the historical use is 0, their allocation is 0. Now that we've gone through the intensification methodology, internally some initial discussion on that, we've realized that it makes more sense to give an allocation to accounts with 0 historical use. And so those first two documents are the methodology updates and the ordinance updates with red text edits. Those are, in case you want to look at them, let's see. That would be starting on page 56 of your packet and page 58. And in both of those, the edits are in red line. And essentially all that's saying is that if an account has 0 historical use, we are going to give them an allocation that is equal to half the average use for their customer class and meter size. And that's the same approach that Ventura was using for their very similar program. So we have a point of reference there for how we came up with that number. And that's all that section is saying. The next section there, so document 3, that is about how to update these allocations if there is a project that is actually intensifying a parcel. And I want to come back to this after we talk about intensifications. But the idea is that if you remember, allocations are per account. So every individual account within the district has an allocation. And when we have development projects, a lot of times they are for a whole parcel because they have not been assigned individual meters yet. So the intensification oftentimes results in a number, like an acre foot of water intensification number for an entire project. And we then have to go back and say, how does that affect those individual allocations? So all the individual meters associated with that project, which could be several. So I'll come back to that in more detail. The fourth part is public participation plan. So intensification, these are new concepts that we are bringing. So we want to make sure that we go through a public messaging process on this so that the public and really specific stakeholders, it's really the developers who this is most relevant to, that they understand what it is that we're proposing and that at this stage they give us feedback. So before we go through the process of adopting this, if they have any relevant insights, we can consider those. And so just to highlight a couple of things in the public participation plan. So where is that in here? Ah, there it is. So that starts on page 69 of your packet. So I've included a couple things in here. We have a table currently on the website that lists the meetings from the allocation process. So I've added proposed meetings to that table for the intensification methodology, keeping in mind we're not talking about the intensification fee yet. And so there's 4 meetings that are proposed right now, and those could change if throughout this process we realize there's additional discussion needed. But essentially we're proposing 2 public meetings, and those 2 meetings would have the same content. We're just giving 2 opportunities for people to attend. So that's essentially in a week on the 2nd, and then on the 8th, a week after that, both of October. And those would be at the district. And we are, yes.
A point. Yeah, I want to circle back to what you said. I was looking at these and going, public? You know, I can't see, anyone coming out to something like this, but then you said probably developers.
Yes.
So that would probably be 1 or 2 people or something.
Yeah.
But we have to make the effort in the presentation in any case, is that right?
Yeah, we don't want to exclude anyone who
Yeah.
would like to attend. It's possible this is relevant to other people depending what project they would be proposing, but the primary audience who I believe this would be most beneficial information for would be developers proposing large projects, large new projects or large redevelopment projects.
Yeah, because you said we may need more meetings, you may need
I
less.
hope not.
Think you'll need less. Okay, thanks.
So yes, the 2 public meetings, and then there would be 2 board meetings after that, one for information and one for adoption. So another thing I want to highlight here is that I know this is a lot of information. This is, an initial opportunity to convey all this information to you. On the 23rd of October, if we were to bring these concepts back, you would be seeing them again. And then after that, on the 13th, if we were ready to ask for adoption, then that would be the 3rd time you'd be seeing this information. So I think if it feels a little overwhelming at this point, remember that we're still planning to present it to you several more times. And just in terms of how we're doing this public messaging, so you're aware of how we're communicating this information, we have a flyer at the district office, also one at here at City Hall for Carpinteria. So members of the public who walk in, especially those who are going to like a development counter specifically, should see a physical copy of the flyer. We also are posting this on social media. And then we could, of course, do other methodologies if we feel like this isn't reaching our audience as well. Like we could always do bill inserts if we feel that's necessary. Although, as I mentioned, this is intended for a subset of the public, really. So I don't know if that would be beneficial, but if we're not getting any engagement, we could always do that. We also reached out to specific people who we know are proposing projects and email this flyer to them directly. So hopefully we're reaching our audience that way.
I'm sorry, these meetings are to discuss allocations or intensifications?
Intensification.
Okay,
Yes.
thanks.
Yes, thank you for clarifying. And yeah, there's just copies of the public notices in here. Okay, so moving on from the public participation plan, so numbers 5 and 6, rules for allocation revisions. So back to the allocation again. When going through this process, we remembered that we have not yet written down how someone could contact the district and ask for an adjustment to their allocation if they feel it is not correct. And part of the reason we held off on that is that because these are so related, it made sense to figure out the intensification methodology before writing down what we would accept in terms of reasons to review allocations. And so I have on, let's see, what pages is it? Looks like pages 64, or no, that's new development, sorry. So after that, there we go. Pages 72 and 73. So we've just written down a couple of reasons for why the district may review allocations. So this does not guarantee we will change a customer's allocation, but these are reasons that a customer could read and think, okay, maybe I should ask the district to review my allocation if I think there's something wrong with it. And there's a form included in here that they could submit. And there's a couple of things that we would think about here, like, is there a household that has a bunch of people living there and that's causing them to regularly exceed their allocation? That might be something we would want to review. There's also a couple things about the allocation methodology where we have to make assumptions, like if there's multiple landscape meters associated with a parcel, or a commercial meter and a landscape meter, or 2 commercial meters, and there's a big lawn. We have to make assumptions about how to divide that landscaping among the meters associated with it, and that might not reflect their actual water use. So if a customer saw that their allocation didn't make sense based on their actual water use, they could contact us and we could see that maybe that was a cause why their allocation legitimately might not be right for their account. So these are reasons why we can review allocations. And then what's next?
Would you expect the primary review process be associated with intensification fees? Like, what? I wouldn't expect somebody to come in right now and say, hey, I'm not getting enough or whatever.
You're right. There's really, there's no enforcement mechanisms around allocation at this point. So I doubt many customers would have much interest in adjusting their allocation. However, at some point in the future, if we were in extended drought and decided to hold people to their allocations, then I could see people might care and we would want to have this in place for that.
So would historical use play into a possible revision? Like, if I've ignored this for 5 years and the drought comes around and we decide to start levying penalties, and I go, well, hey, for the last year I've had 5 people here, my use has been this the entire time.
So we've, if we adopt the changes that are being proposed here, there would be an allocation given to accounts with historical use. If those accounts start using their meter, I think I've written in a separate section here that if they have at least, I want to say it was 6 months of use, if they have some time frame where they are then continuously using their meter, they can request a review at that point. Because that would, yes, then they would no longer be zero use.
Thanks.
Yeah, I had you mentioned drought, and it's my understanding that the states make conservation a way of life. It's not drought. And they say that, oh, yes, individual families and farmers, no, this fee is not for you. We will be the water's retailers will be responsible for paying these fees if you go over. And it's so disingenuous because we don't know. We don't know yet, and I can't imagine them putting the screws down if there's no drought. But that's the way they're writing it. It's still up in the air how these allocations, might have. Oh, and my second question is, we have the Eye on Water. You go to the website, you can see, how much by hour, by minute you're using on your account. Is that going to be the same website for allocations? Can we merge the two, or that'll be a different one, or maybe a link or something that people can see their their or is it not in the future, or is that not going to happen?
The Eye on Water website is provided through an outside software provider, so at this point, it is not something we could not add allocations there. However, we do have, trying to find the web page document. So we have, if you look at page 51 of your packet, it shows the district's allocation webpage. So we have a dedicated website where people can go right now, and there's actually a customer lookup feature so people can look up their individual allocation.
Oh?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
And then we also are planning to add the allocation to customers' bills. However, we wanted to complete the intensification methodology and then also go through a public messaging process on that so that people understood what it was when it showed up on their bills.
I'm sure nobody has any idea at this point, but, great, that's great.
Okay, where were we? Did we talk about, yes, allocation revisions. Okay, so the last part, the methods for calculating intensification. So what we want to calculate right now is if a development proposes to change the use of a parcel, is it increasing the water demand of that parcel? So this is really where the staff memo associated with this on page 48 becomes relevant. So we have customers submit intent to serve applications when they are making really any modification to a parcel. We've written rules in these two documents, the methodology document, the second one from the bottom, as well as the ordinance stating what would be exempt from this review, because we're not intending to capture minor changes to a parcel which are not changing the intended use of that parcel. So if someone's modifying landscaping or adding an ADU or doing an interior remodel of their house, that's not what we're intending to capture here. What we're really intending to capture are those major redevelopments or new developments proposed. So say there was, you have one house on a very large parcel, which is zoned so that it could have additional houses, and a developer comes in and proposes to build some high-density apartment complex or condominium complex on that parcel. That's what we'd want to capture, because that's a substantial change in the use of that parcel. So we have these intent to serve letters, and when an application for those is submitted, we would then go through this intensification review. And if we found that there was intensification of the parcel, we would put that as a condition of their letter and say how much we believe they're intensifying the parcel in terms of acre feet per year of water use, and then the fee associated with that once we determine the basis for that fee. And the way that we're calculating intensification, and this is why the allocations are relevant, is that the allocation is the baseline for the parcel. So if there's 1 meter on the parcel, that's our allocation. If there's multiple meters on the parcel, we add up the allocations for each of those individual meters. And that is the baseline water use for that parcel. We then look at, for the development, what is the expected water use of that development? And remember, these developments already have to submit landscaping plans. Their MWELO document that the county provides, they provide estimated landscaping water use through that. And then the city of Santa Barbara also has water demand factors, which are pretty commonly used, for what I've seen, for commercial water use, hotel water use. They have a couple of different categories there. So developers could use those as points of reference, and we would consider those best practices for estimating the water use of their development. If they want to do something else, they could. They would just have to justify it. So essentially, we then have those two data points to compare, their baseline allocation as well as the expected water use of the development. We would say if the expected water use is greater, they're intensifying the water use of that parcel. And that difference would be what we could charge them for on a per acre foot basis. And so those two documents that I've included, let's see what pages they're on. Should be towards the back. So that would be 75 and 77. So there's a lot of text in both of those, but essentially they're just saying it's the current water use minus the proposed water use, and then the difference there between the two. And so just to circle back to the point that I'd made before about updating allocations. So if we come to the conclusion that a development is proposing to intensify the water use of a parcel, and we put that in the intent to serve letter that we issue them, at some point, that development is going to get individual meters, and those meters are going to be entered into our billing system, and they need to have an allocation associated with them. And it's a little bit tricky to figure out how to go from that parcel total water use into those individual allocations. And so I just have a document here, can't find it, going through a couple examples of how we would do that. So it's clear both to the district and to the developer or whoever it is that that intent to serve application was issued to, how we would make that translation. And the alternative there would be that the developer could tell us how they wanted the water allocated to those different meters, within reason, of course. But it's possible that they might have more insight, since we would have to make some assumptions based on their plans otherwise. That is, yes, on page 65, if you wanted to look at that. But it's a little bit complicated to go through. That is the gist of what we're proposing. The public meetings, again, will focus on the intensification methodology, so those last two documents, 7 and 8, and less so the other updates, but they are all related.
Have you analyzed what, like, dollar per acre foot it's gonna look like for these?
I've included, I believe in one of the documents, references to what we see at a couple of neighboring agencies, knowing that they might apply this a little bit differently than we do. However, we have not gone through the process of a formal study.
Do you have a ballpark? Do we know what we're asking for? Like, what are we
Yeah, I
talking
mean, I
about
think
here?
if you look at
What did I write down?
potential water supplies that are coming up, you know, we could look at the cap and divide that by 1,000 acre feet, and that would give you a per acre foot price. If you look at City of Santa Barbara's desal plant, we could get a number from that and divide it by the number of acre feet. We can get unit prices to quantify what a new water supply is worth.
Right. And then, you probably don't know, but I'm sure we know what the total allocation is as of today.
It's been a long time since I've looked at that.
I'm sure, but you can, you
It's-
have it.
Yeah,
Yes,
could get it.
yes.
it's close to, I think, the 4,200, I assume.
Right.
So we do need to know at this point what our total allocation is, because the state, that's what the state will hold us to. And at this point, we are under the state's limit. So we're okay on that.
Right.
And yes, we do have that number.
Thanks.
Shirley? Molly? Thank you.
Okay?
Yeah.
We're done.
Thank you.
Done.
Good job.
Okay, we move on to item number 7D. Consider update of Rule 16F to rules and regulations for information. Bob?
Yeah, so Rule 16 is the meter rule in our rules and regulations, and in particular, 16F is the rule that is governs the requirements for landscape meters. And we put this rule in place recently that top line dedicated landscape water meters are required for residential landscapes over 5,000 square feet and non-residential landscapes over 1,000 square feet. That was in response to the state's model or landscape ordinance that made changes or new landscapes be required to have a dedicated landscape meter. The city adopted an ordinance which was called the model ordinance from the state, and so this MWILO stands for model water. Yeah, I'm not sure what the. I'm sorry.
Model water efficient?
Water efficiency landscape ordinance. There you go. And so we thought that was the end of it. We thought, okay, we've updated our rules. It's consistent with the state's policy. It's consistent with the adopted policy at the city. But then we had a situation where we had a proposal to modify an existing landscape, which was mostly turf, and put efficient landscaping in, and it required a coastal development permit. And so that triggered this requirement to assess and make the requirement of a dedicated landscape meter. And so we looked at it and we said, boy, that really seems crosswise to trying to incentivize putting in water efficient landscape to then make them put in a meter and charge them capital cost recovery fees. And so what we're proposing is an exception to this rule where we say, we still want you to put in a landscape meter, but we're going to waive the capital cost recovery fees, which are the main, or the biggest cost of those dedicated meters. So this is our way of trying to soften the blow and not penalize someone for doing the right thing. This is just for information tonight. We'll bring this back at the next meeting for approval. If you have any feedback, we're interested in hearing it tonight.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I think, I agree with that. I think it's a good thing to do, and it is tough because we're also really looking and trying to think about climate change in all of our decisions. And on the one hand, you want to discourage or separate meters for landscaping or changing that. On the other hand, you want to have, as much biological steps that can make the earth more alive, so it will absorb carbon, and the trees to keep hot spots from happening. A whole of LA, they've mapped the whole city for hot spots and things like that, and that all has to do with shrubbery, and so yeah, I think this is a really good idea that you've thought of, so thank you.
But Bob, this only happens when somebody comes in for a building permit to make a change on their property, because most people are not going to come to the county or the city for changing their landscaping, number one. But number two, most people are reducing, they're taking out lawns and they're putting in. So it only happens when they come in for a development plan.
Yes, so whenever, all of Carpinteria is in the coastal zone. And so whenever you make substantial changes, the proper way to do it is to check with the city regarding permitting. And so in this situation, there was enough changes to the landscaping that triggered a coastal development permit requirement.
Okay.
So would this avoid the fee for any landscape-only non-redevelopment project?
Yes, so basically we're saying, there's some staff discretion in here, but
Yep.
basically we're looking at it and saying, okay, where someone is proposing an improvement to landscaping, but it triggers a requirement for a permit, we'll maintain the requirement for the dedicated meter, but we'll waive the
CCR.
CCRF, yeah.
It probably would be unusual, but what if they were going from native to a beautiful lawn or something? Would
Right.
that'd be waived too?
No, that's why I say in staff discretion to look at it and say that this is not, let's see, projects require a dedicated landscape area do not qualify as new development. Yeah, so we might want to write in some language in there to give staff a little bit more discretion so that we're basically,
Yeah, how I read it is that you're just determining if it's new development or redevelopment. But if I redevelop it to intensify my water use there, I feel like I wouldn't be expecting to pay it now. I feel like.
yeah, okay, that's good input.
Except we can move forward with this, and later on the state says, well, you guys approved that, and then now that allocation for that parcel is going to be less than we approved.
Well, this doesn't change the allocation. This is basically is just saying the state is driving this idea that it wants, for significant size landscapes, it wants dedicated landscape meters. So we're saying, okay, we'll do that. But in situations where it's not redevelopment, it's just someone trying to do changes, in their landscaping for the better. So we want to have the ability to waive the capital cost recovery fee in those situations.
Right, but what you're saying is if they really go in and put in this huge lawn, which they're still allowed to do at the moment, you're not gonna waive the.
No, that's what, I think that was Director Balch's point, was
Right,
there needs to be
but
some.
then the point is, because if we would approve it now, then later on we can't tell them, hey, you can't do that because the state tells us you can't do that, so it is, I mean,
You can't put in turf?
well, you could put in turf, but eventually the state's gonna say, hey, if you got a 1/4 acre lot with a, whatever, 4-bedroom house, you're only allowed to have X amount of water.
Oh, I see, yeah.
Then we're telling them, oh, right now, yeah, you can do that, but it's, eventually, there's gonna be an, limitation on what an individual, I mean, a homeowner can use, so it is.
The allocation setting for residential includes an assessment of existing landscape in, is it 2019? Or what was the, or 2021 maybe? Yeah, so there was an aerial, statewide aerial photo taken. They looked at what the existing, landscaping was, and they made some calculations on how much that landscape took. So they sort of took the approach that we're gonna set a time, we're gonna use that moment in time as the basis for what's allowed on that property. So it really doesn't matter beyond that. If someone plants a big lawn of turf, they're gonna end up going over their allocation. There may be penalties associated with that, and so that's just the way it's set up.
Well, I understand that. It just seems like the state wants to encourage everybody to use less water. That means less water in your landscaping. But what you're telling me is whatever you were doing in 2019 is what you're allowed to do.
That's the way that the allocations were set, using that baseline. That's not to say we can't modify those
Encourage
allocations
them, okay.
lower, yeah.
All right, that'll be fun. So,
Yeah.
okay. Any more questions on that one? Then we move on to item number 7E. Consider a CAP project update for information. Bob and Rob, is he?
Yeah, Rob Morrow is with us. It's been a while, I think, since we've given an update. We've been working on the final design earnestly and making progress. We've had some changes with respect to funding that has occurred in the past several months. And so I had Rob put together just a quick slide deck. We're going to try to come back on a more regular basis as we get closer and closer to the end of this design process. So this will be the first in a series. Rob, are you with us?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. And will you be running the slide deck?
Yes.
Okay. So we put together a brief staff report and just a few slides to update what's been happening with the CAP project since we last talked in late April. And I think, as usual, if you have questions, just speak up and we can address them. But we have about 5 slides here. So next slide. So we're going to talk about, we got 4 main topics of what's been happening, and then the last slide is laying out the information that's going to be coming to you over the next several months with the current schedule of advertising the project and getting bids in the spring of 2025. Next slide, please. So starting with the good news, we heard in late June and confirmed in July that the Bureau of Reclamation awarded an additional funding for the project, from increasing our total award to $18.4 million. And I'll note that the grant is for 25% of eligible costs. And we were intentionally conservative in our cost estimate that we submitted with the grant, so we would not have to go back and ask for more money again. So we're hoping that's more than we're gonna need or be eligible for. We do have an agreement in place for the first set of money from the Bureau, and we'll be amending that agreement to include this funding over the next several months.
So it went up.
So that's federal funds. On the state level, last time we talked, we went from $15 million in funding about a year ago to early this year was reduced to $5 million, and that was put into place in March by the state board. The good news is the final the reduction was based on the governor's budget in January. The final budget that was approved in June had a little more money for grant funding for water projects, for recycled water projects in particular. And so the state board increased our grant from 5 million to 8 million. So that was approved by the state board last month. There is a small chance we could get a little more money in next spring. There's a provision that if projects aren't ready to move forward by March 31st, that their funding is going to be reallocated across projects that are ready to go. So there was about a total of about 70 million that was allocated across projects that of which we got 8 million. Now I'll note here that state funding is pretty limited now. We've really gone through as much as we can. Prop 4 on the ballot has a lot of stuff in it, including money for grant funding for water projects and water recycling. And if that is approved in November, there is a chance we'd be able to get some of that money through the state, depending on how quickly it goes, but we would definitely be positioning for that. And the last item here is a low interest loan, SRF loan. A few items later on the agenda is the authorizing resolution for that loan. And so we've locked in our rate. I think it's 1.8 or 1.9%. I haven't looked at it in a couple months. I apologize. But we've got a very good rate. And what this is doing is locking everything in, and we don't need to draw on the loan until the board wants to do that, which would be after we go to construction award. So we're mainly getting this all in place so that we can be ready for construction. We also need this closed to move forward with a couple other administrative items, permitting items, and so that this is in place. And I'm sure Bob will talk about the authorizing resolution and when that comes up in a few items. So that's grants and loans. The main thing we've been working on the last few months, if you go to the next slide, is the conditional use permit / coastal development permit application to the city. That's delegated, the coastal development permit components delegated by the Coastal Commission. So we've had several meetings with the city staff as well as Coastal Commission, and submitted that in August, and got an email last week that it's been distributed around the city for the 30-day review. So like other projects you guys have had, like well drilling projects and things like that, this will go to a public hearing. We don't know the schedule of that yet, but the earliest would be late October, probably into November. But that's one of the things we'll keep everyone updated on, because it will be an important public hearing for the project. And also we're putting together some outreach materials for folks that are going to be impacted by construction of the project. And again, we're just starting to put some of that together, and we'll be working with Bob and staff on refining that and working on ways to best communicate with folks about the project and potential impacts. The other thing, the other big permits we're gonna need to get are from the regional board. One permit is for injection of the water into the groundwater basin, and the other is the Carpinteria Sanitary District's permit to discharge into the ocean will be updated to incorporate the discharges from CAP. And so we've been meeting with the regional board and the Division of Drinking Water, the State Board Division of Drinking Water, is the one that reviews the recycled water component of this and deems us compliant with public health regulations. And then their recommendations are included in the regional board recommendations, or regional board permit, excuse me. And so again, we've been coordinating with both of those, and Montgomery Associates completed the bulk of the groundwater modeling, and we presented to them in July, and we just actually got comments last week. So nothing too substantial. So it looks like we're going to be moving forward with that as well. So all good information there. And actually one outcome of the modeling, we'll go to the next slide, is we were able to consolidate the locations of the monitoring wells closer to the injection wells, which it has some cost benefits, but I think the bigger thing is it's going to reduce impacts, construction impacts during drilling, instead of having to have two separate sites with sound walls put up and drilling activities over extended period. We're able to consolidate the injection well and the monitoring well into one, going to be within one sound wall, and so one mobilization, drilling for the injection well, and then they can move over and do the monitoring well. So the monitoring well that was originally going to be in Franklin Park, that was then moved out of the park because of the oak trees that were planted, and then got really close to all the houses there. We're now going to put at the end of Meadowview Lane, and again coordinate that with the injection well that's going on Meadowview. And then we're able to also move the monitor wells closer on St. Joseph's Church. The main benefit there is less impact to the church during construction, as well as lowering the cost of the easement acquisition there. So that's the monitor well update. The next one is on the AWPF, Advanced Water Treatment Facility Design Package. Last time we talked, we had gotten the 50% design in December of last year. We went through a value engineering process. We talked to you guys about some of the things that we considered and ultimately recommended. And that's been incorporated into the design. We're supposed to get that in the next 2 weeks. That will include a cost update. So one of our next updates to you about a month from now will be an overall program cost update. But just noting that this design package did include several cost saving measures, and we are looking forward to the updated cost estimates coming from the design engineer. So
Well, can I ask a question about that?
Yeah, go ahead.
So now the final design, design package is completed 75%?
Right.
Because there was a 50% here. Oh, okay. And then it's going to be 100% next month?
No, it'll take a few months.
Oh.
So we'll get the 75%, say the first week of October. We've got about a month, 2 to 4 weeks to review it. That's Bob and his staff. That's Carpinteria San and their staff, and WSC, and we provide comments back. Then it's a few months to get to the final bid documents. We do a last review, and they'll be ready to go out to advertise for bid by February of next year.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Yeah. So as I mentioned up front, we've got more stuff coming to you over the next several months. With a big asterisk will be some of these are really dependent on things out of our control. So some of these may slide, but I at least wanted to get it in front of you to let you know it'll be coming soon. So before I get into the details of all the items on the left, as I mentioned, ultimately advertising the 3 packages for construction and getting bid results in the spring will be what we'll be coming back to you with construction numbers to make decisions around. So going back to where we are now, so today you guys have you're reviewing the JEPA, the Joint Exercise of Powers Agreement, and the lease agreement, with the goal to have that approved by the board in October, as well as that will be going to the Carpinteria Sanitary District Board in October. Also today I mentioned the SRF authorization, so that can help move the SRF loan forward. In October, we'll be coming back with the 75% cost update that includes the 75% design estimate, and then also talking about some ideas for communication around the project. Again, there will be the planning hearing in the relative near future, but also just communicating about the grants received, project benefits, and things like that. So that's October, and then by November, we will need to process an EIR addendum. It's pretty minor. There's nothing. It's acknowledging the movement of the injection wells and the monitoring wells slightly from how they were described in the certified EIR, but no changes in impacts whatsoever. And so that's one thing that will need to be finalized before we get to construction. It's also needed for the CUP and CDP permit. The next item there is the operations agreement. That's between the water district and the sanitation district. That's really got the meat of the relationship between the water district and sand district. That's introduced with the JEPA, and it gets into cost and cost recovery and allocation of risks and responsibilities. So we'll be coming with some previews of that to you in the meantime. And then also the easement agreement with St. Joseph's. So that's to use the land to put the injection well on and the monitoring wells on. We've minimized the above ground impacts, and we've had several meetings with the church. But one of the things here is we need this agreement in place to get our CDP, CUP permit, because we need authorization to construct on the various components of the project to be able to get that permit. Second to last thing here is Westwater, the contract that was approved, I think, about a month ago to look at the water supply alternatives analysis. And again, this comes out of the discussions we had last spring of the questions that you posed as far as what are the alternatives to CAP and what are the impacts of not doing CAP, what are the benefits of doing CAP. And so this analysis isn't about CAP, it's about your existing supplies and what your options are with your state water supplies. And so we can take that information and use that to help, again, frame what's the options compared with CAP, and then also use some of the information for that in the economic analysis that looks at the costs and benefits of CAP, which would flow out of that work by Westwater. And then the last item there is the hearing. Again, that'll be set by the city, but we'll be coordinating that and keeping you guys up to date on that. And then I've mentioned after the economic analysis update in the early 2025, we'll be finalizing the design documents and then advertising the projects for bid. And again, we've got 3 construction packages. One is the advanced treatment plant, one is the pipelines, and the third is the injection and monitoring wells. So that's the update I've got here. Is there any questions or comments?
Polly?
So, thanks, Rob. That's a really just a terrific update. Let me make sure I understand the financials kind of just in a nutshell. So it looks like, have we made up what we lost in the original grant? We went from 15 down to 5, then we gained 3 recently, right? So
Yeah.
that takes us back up to 8, and then at least on the state, and then the additional 8.7 that we're now getting from the Bureau, does that help us become whole again financially based on?
Not fully.
Yeah, no.
We had, in the analysis we were presented to you guys last March, April, we assumed we'd get that grant, that USBR grant. So
right.
compared to where we were
Never mind.
previously, we're still down from the 15 to 8.
Okay,
So, sorry.
okay,
But that's again, that's gonna be our focus, is getting that state funding back, because we have, at this point, the federal funds are maximized at 25%, and we can't go beyond that.
okay. And you said, and so just to reiterate, ergo, that's why we're doing a lower cost initial design version of what we had intended.
Yeah, I mean, well, I think we looked at the value engineering process was looking at, we looked at one option of cutting it a lot, and but the yield would go down substantially. So the savings we get from making it small did not make sense. So mainly what we did was constrain, instead of having the ability to have a big expansion in the future, we really just tighten down what we're going to do now, and also incorporated suggestions from other operators and things like that, just to cut costs in various places.
Okay. And your team will be reviewing the 75%. What's the next document that you're going to get to review, your team?
Yeah, the 75% is the main next one, and then really the 50% is where a lot of the changes happen. Typically, the 75% is to make sure everything we've been talking about is there and is correctly presented. And then after the 75%, it gets to basically the 90, which then becomes final design. And so at that point, we're really building out the construction documents.
Okay.
And the project itself isn't changing much. It's more what we're communicating to the construction.
Oh, okay. Thanks, Rob. That's helpful. I'm asking Bob, so when does your team, you were talking about the different, Rob is talking about, he'll be reviewing it, you guys, when do you get that to review?
We review it concurrently with WSC. WSC is acting as our agent, so we're an extension of our staff.
Reviewing it, your team is going to be reviewing it with them?
Yes.
Okay. And when is that again?
I think at the end of October,
End of October.
Yeah,
Thank you.
we're getting it Friday, October 4th.
or beginning of October.
And so we've in the schedule, we've got I think 4 weeks to get all of our comments back. So there's a
Okay.
process through that where we get comments, talk to Sand District, talk to Bob, go through kind of a circle,
Okay.
and conclude with where we want to move forward with.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Casey?
Do they provide cost estimates at 75 and 90, or is 75 and then final? What do they do?
At each step, we'll get an updated cost estimate.
So 75, 90, and final?
In final, yeah, yes. Although, I mean, I don't expect much to change from 75 forward.
Right.
I mean, they will be pulling the latest unit cost and bids and things like that, but I don't expect much to change unless we make substantial changes.
Shirley?
Yeah, I had a question probably maybe for Bob more, is that there's a lot of details, a lot of steps going forward on this project, and we do have a cap committee from the board, and I don't recall seeing very many committee member meetings on this. Should we be having them, or how does anybody else feel about that?
I agree, that's a good point. I know there hasn't always been a lot of time, but it's an excellent point.
Yeah, and one area that we are wanting to start really engaging the committee and the board as a whole is outreach. It's going to be important for us to be getting the messages and the right messages out there as we're heading into this sort of last phase of the design and preparing to, get permits and it's going to become a more visible project. And so that will be one area that we will start working with the committee to.
Yeah, that's one area, and the other area is, of course, the involvement in the project, especially the money. It's a lot of money.
Yeah. So I think we haven't had any updates on the funding up to this point. So we're kind of waiting for this big update at 75%.
And and working with sanitary and the different tweaks and changes in the design. So, some good work.
Yeah, to that point, we have met with the committee. It hasn't been that recently, but we have met with the committee regarding the JEPA and the ground lease, the Joint Exercise of Powers Agreement. So we're going to be talking about that tonight, and then we'll be bringing it back at the next meeting for consideration.
Thank you.
Okay, Rob, this is Case. As far as you mentioned, you're going to limit the expansion, any future expansion of the project, and that would cut some of the cost. Is that how much are you going to? How much are you going to limit the project to, as far as?
Yeah. One of the original concepts was to oversize pipes and leave space for future expansion. And the longer we go, the less likely it seems that wastewater flows are going to increase substantially. And even once we analyzed the housing push from the state down to the county and down to your service area, the impacts were not as large as we were thinking when we started this effort. So that we went through a process to determine that it makes sense to maximize, to focus the investment and make use, try to make use of the facilities as much as possible instead of oversizing them and not using all of the capacity very much.
Right, so you basically, the oversizing was more focused on Carpinteria, and I don't want to confuse this, but adding any water from Montecito and Summerland is not even in the picture then, right? Or expansion, as far as us doing it cheaper than they do themselves.
Yeah, I mean, so that was part of it. That was a consideration. There's still, there is some build out capacity that's available. But it doesn't, we're not assuming all of that is going to happen, where, there's a bunch of housing growth and then there's a bunch of, the Montecito's flow comes over, and actually we're potentially looking at stormwater diversions in the future, which is becoming more and more common. And so we're going to be producing about 1 MGD initially, but we can still go up to 1.3. Originally, when we started the project, we were looking at 1.5 or more. And so that's one of the things we scaled down.
All right, thank you.
Rob, I had one more question. Sorry, on the milestones, when do you anticipate receiving like DDW and regional board like approvals?
Yeah. There's two answers to that. One, we try to get as much feedback as we can through meetings with them, because they, DDW in particular is very impacted, is very staff limited right now, and review times are can be a year plus for these documents. So what we're trying to do, or what we are doing, is having these meetings to identify issues that impact design of the project, impact costs of the project. And so our first step is to, from an approval process, is to submit a Title 22 engineering report, which DDW reviews, and then that gets finalized and that gets incorporated to the regional board permit, and then the regional board has its process. In parallel, we've been submitting stuff to the regional board that's going to get incorporated into their permit, like the anti-degradation analysis and like the change quality to the to the discharge, and we're getting their feedback now for information that will ultimately be included in the permit. So that was a long answer to DDW approval would be 6 months to a year from now, and then regional board permit approval would be 6 months to a year after that. And that's fairly common for these projects because of the information you need to submit to DDW. You don't really have until about now. And then the regional board always follows the DDW process.
So you anticipate building before permitting?
Yes, and I hear where you're going with that, and I can tell you that it's every single project like this, that's the process that it follows, because you don't have the information to start the process until close to when you're getting close to construction. But like we presented the groundwater modeling information, that's a big component that DDW weighs in on. They've already commented on that. We've already provided anti-degradation stuff to the regional board, geochemical analysis, change in blending to the regional board. So we're addressing all the content that would have major impacts on project design, but we won't have a final permit, or we won't have even a draft permit until we're into construction.
So 2 years-ish from now, it could be operational?
Well, our construction schedule is about 30 months right now, and the big swing on that is electrical equipment, which we are seeing and hearing the times are coming down from where they are now, which is good because it's a risk, a schedule risk, and it becomes a cost that flows into the construction estimate. So the reason I'm hesitating on the numbers because it's really driven by that electrical switchgear estimates, and we're currently talking with the vendors on the latest estimates that they can commit to.
But from a permitting stance, I guess, like when would you expect a DDW and a regional water board to have approved permits?
Yeah, I'd say like 2 years from now.
And so we build a $70 million plant and don't know if we'll get approved?
No,
sure?
that's no. We've been meeting with them. There's similar projects that have been approved. We know generally what the terms of the permit are going to be based on those projects. They haven't identified anything that would prevent us from moving forward. And like I said, every single one of these projects follows that pathway just because of the information that they need to be able to process the permit.
Yeah, and I'll just say the risk isn't whether the permit will be issued, the risk is what the terms of the permit will be.
Right,
And
which
so-
could drastically alter the plan or something, right?
Yeah, and so we're trying to get ahead of that by understanding all of the issues before we get to the end and they put the permit together.
Yeah, and I mean, I'll just say, the water reuse conference was last week, and I'm part of the regulatory committee for that. And one of the things that they've done over the past year is compile every single permit that's been issued by each regional board on these projects. And so the Soquel Creek permit, which is just up by Santa Cruz, is the most recent permit that's been issued, and that came from the Central Coast Regional Board. And everything that, when we've talked to DDW and the regional board, they expect our permit to be very similar to that one. And so we've used that, like for example, for estimating our costs for monitoring, and that's included in the O&M costs that we presented last spring, and we will include in our latest update.
Thanks.
Okay, any other questions? Thanks, Rob.
Yep, thanks, Rob.
Welcome.
Then we move on to item number 7F, consider ratification of engagement of Pueblo Water Resources for the Smiley replacement well design services in an amount not to exceed $19,327 for action. Bob?
Yeah, I'm going to present on this one, but the presentation also applies to item G. So when we get to G, I'll refer back to the presentation I just did.
Got it, okay. So,
So Smiley Well is one of our 3 operating wells in the district, and it was constructed in 1974. It's always had issues with sanding, and that was due to improper construction of the gravel pack at the time of construction. It's deteriorated over time with other issues, of course. As wells age, they lose capacity and eventually become not really as useful as you would like to have them in those locations. And so in the case of Smiley Well, we've, I think, hit that point. We've probably been at that point for several years now, and we've identified it as a well that should be replaced. We're losing opportunity for both the ability to pump water from that location as well as actually inject water in that location. The current well is not ASR compatible, and so one of the proposals is to replace that well with a well that is compatible. The other 2 wells, the El Caro well and the high school well, do have ASR compatibility. This well produces currently about 200 gallons a minute or 240 acre-feet per year, and that's compared to Headquarters Well, which produces 1,200 gallons a minute, and El Caro well, which produces 800 gallons a minute. So it's a very low producer. Its location in the basin is kind of an ideal location because it's just outside of what we call the confined zone. And so the pressure response is a little bit different when we do injection, as well as the water level in that location is lower than most of the basin. In other words, there's a depression in that area, so it's a good location to actually inject water for both storage reasons and for groundwater management reasons. We've identified that if the well is replaced, we would replace it with a well with modern specifications, like things like the screens would be wire wrap stainless steel screens, which have a larger opening and allow more water to come into the well bore. We have had an analysis done at that location, and the estimates based on that analysis is about 4x of what it's currently producing. So we expect that we could produce as much as 800 gallons a minute in that location and with a properly designed well. So the cost of a well, and this is all in, including design, drilling of the well, permitting, and that permitting is including what we call an ASR injection permit, and that's governed kind of through the same state regional water quality control board that is looking at the CAPS injection. It's a different permit, different general permit called the ASR permit. But some of the issues are similar, and so we would have to go through a testing program at this location to show the state that it's a safe thing to do. All in, the cost is estimated to be about $4 million. And so this project can't be funded through the traditional capital budget that we use, which is limited to $1 million a year. And so we have been looking for grants to help us bridge the funding. And we believe that there is a grant out there that we think we might be, that we qualify for, but we might actually be able to get. So in August of 2024, the USBR released a notice of funding opportunity, indicating that they have up to $10 million per applicant, or I'm sorry, per project for drought resiliency projects and groundwater management projects. We actually checked the box for both of those. And so we feel pretty good about our chances, although it is a very competitive program. There's a lot of need out there, and so we have to make sure we have a good application outlining all the benefits, and we also have to make sure that we're far enough along, as close to shovel ready as we can be. And so we have done a basis of design report in 2023. As the item F says, this item is to ratify the engagement of Pueblo Water Resources to complete the well design. So in the interest of time, I approved their proposal to finish up the design for that amount of $19,327. Included in that proposal was also the development of ASR testing program that would be used to get us moving on the ASR permit. The grant itself has a 50% local match, so even if we were to get the grant, we would still be looking at about $2 million in local funds. The application period for this grant is very short, October 7th, which is just a few weeks away. So it was important for us to get moving on some of the elements that we could provide in this application. And one of them was a complete design, which Pueblo Water Resources has indicated that they're on track to complete it by the October 7th date. And so because of, we wanted to do the application in-house, but because of the technical nature and the short fuse, we felt it was important to have WSC assist us. Our approach is to try to get better at preparing these grant applications, and so one of the ways that we can do that is work with someone who does this frequently, and build up our not only for this project, but in general, build up our skills for applying for these different grants. These aren't grants that come around typically multiple times, so we want to be ready if we don't get this one for the next one. So as I said, kind of the implementation of the project, we did a basis of design report in 2023 that's completed. The final design of the well construction was authorized and it's in progress. We've had assurances that will be completed by the time the application is due. Additionally, the ASR well testing program, same thing, it's in progress, is authorized. And so it will be ready by the time the application is due. We also had the CEQA analysis authorized in 2023, but no progress was made, largely because we didn't have the grant. We didn't get the grant that we're going after, and so we're picking that back up, and we're going to finish the CEQA analysis now that now that we'll have a complete design. There is a site design element that will have to occur after the well is drilled, and so that's another step in the future. We have a proposal for that, but we don't believe it's time yet to get going on that work. But this schedule and number of steps will be included in the application. Permitting is to be completed in conjunction with the final design, so we'll have to go and get a CDP from the county on this well. And then, as I indicated, the testing program is to assist us with acquiring an ASR regional permit, and that will also be concurrent with the final design. So there are two staff recommendations. One for item F, which is just to ratify the engagement of Pueblo Water Resources to complete the well design and develop an ASR testing program in the amount of not to exceed $19,327. So we'll take that one first.
So moved.
Okay, we got a motion.
I have a question.
Go for it.
Okay, yeah, as usual. I always would like to know the history with these money allocations. So for Pueblo, how much is their total design on this well?
So they have including the basis of design report that they did in 2023, it's about 40,000, including this 19,000 that's being approved.
Including this, okay, 40,000 design, okay. Okay, yeah, I have further questions about the other things, but for that one, that was my question. Thank you.
Okay, so we have a motion.
I'll second it, but I have a question.
Question first.
Is there any advantage to like doing the ASR permitting, testing, evaluation for the other ASR capable wells and trying to roll that into that? Does that grant cover that or no?
No, it doesn't. Well, our application is not proposing that it cover that, but it does give us a roadmap to do that, and we are looking at that. The limitation on those wells is if we do go forward with the ASR. I'm sorry. If we do go forward with the CAP project, those two wells won't be usable for ASR because it will be competing with the other two injection wells that are in that space. This Smiley well is on the outside of the confined zone, so it's not going to affect the operation of CAP.
Thanks.
And the only comment I wanted to make as we got a discussion is that you're still happy with the location. I don't know why I thought there might be a location closer.
We have a site. It's actually a very good location.
Okay,
Yes,
never mind, never
we have
mind.
a site, and there are a number of other sites that have been identified as potential
Got it.
future ASR well locations.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we got a motion and a second. Any more discussion? We need a roll call, please.
Director Holcomb.
Yes.
Director Johnson.
Aye.
Director Roberts is absent. Director Balch.
Aye.
Director Van Wingerde.
Yes.
Motion carries 4-1.
Then we go on to resolution, well, it's then the consider engagement of WSC for grant application assistance for the Smiley well in amount not to exceed $90,919 for action.
Polly makes a motion.
Second.
We got a motion and a second. Any more discussion?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Yeah, it kind of seems strange that is about the same amount that we're paying for the design and for assistance on a grant application. And I know there's a time situation, but is, just for assistance on the grant applications, that's about 1% of the possible grant, that we might get, 2.5 million or 2 million, depending on the total cost. Here it says 5 million for the well. So is that generally in the ballpark? 1%? It really would be nice to get up to speed on these applications.
I don't know that there's a rule of thumb for that.
Ah.
It just depends on how complex the project is, I think, and the grant program. But basically, we said, we told them how many hours we thought we would need, and that was the basis for the pricing.
Okay, thank you for that clarification.
How many hours was it?
It's detailed here.
Yeah, it's in there, but I don't have it off the top of my head.
Okay, we got a motion and a second. Any more discussion? Roll call, please.
Director Holcomb.
Yes.
Director Johnson.
Aye.
Director Roberts is absent. Director Balch.
Aye.
Director Van Weerden.
Yes.
Motion carries 4-0, or I'm sorry, 4-1.
Then we move on to item number 7H, consider resolution number 1160, authorizing the execution and delivery of a construction and installment agreement for CAP for action. Bob?
Yes. So Rob had mentioned this.
I'm sorry. I thought we had another item on the Smiley well. Can I ask one other question?
Sure.
Thank you. Yeah, because I was wondering why the construction cost is 1.04 million, right? And the amount of the total cost of the well is on here is 5 million, and then Pueblo's design is 40,000. And I wonder why. It seems like that's a big difference in the money. And also, I was kind of comparing the new Smiley to the old Smiley, and it seems like and I'm not Case knows more about drilling wells than I do, for sure, but the diameter is about the same, and the depth is about the same, 800-something feet, because we can't really use Aquifer D, because that's about 1,000 feet or more, and the water quality's not very good. It would be really nice if we found different on Aquifer D. But, yeah, so what is that difference in the price? And
Yeah,
the new
so
one's gonna be different technology, and it's gonna have a lot more pumping power.
I think you're getting the 1 million from the
Yep.
basis of design report.
Uh-huh. Wait, no. Where is it? It's the engineering, the cost to build it, the cost to actually drill it.
Yeah. So that was done a year ago, and more recent updates of what the costs have looked like when we've been doing the analysis is on the injection wells for CAP have been coming back at around 2 million.
Oh,
Yeah. So the well drilling portion of it, we're looking at 2 million. The above ground site improvements, we're looking at roughly 1 million, and then all the design and permitting, we're looking at about 500,000, and then the rest is contingency.
well, that's discouraging. Okay, well, thank you for that explanation. All right. Sorry, I meant to.
No, we're good. So Bob, go ahead. Item number 8, right? Resolution number 1160.
Yes, we can move on to that. Rob mentioned Resolution 1160. It's been called the closing resolution for the CAP SRF funding program. It's also called the installment agreement inside of the actual agreement itself. So we're required to authorize the execution of that agreement, so that 1160 is doing that. So a couple of considerations before we move forward here. So by entering into the installment agreement, CVWD opens the path to funding for CAP. So this is an important step to make sure we have the funding secured. This includes a low-interest loan. I believe Rob said 1.9, but I think it's actually 1.7% of 42.5 million, and that can be slightly adjusted as numbers come in. It only will be considered debt if funds are drawn from that. So if we don't go forward with the project, then even though we've passed this resolution and entered into the agreement, it doesn't affect us in terms of obligation of debt. Additionally, this agreement covers the 8 million through the water recycling funding program that Rob mentioned earlier in his report, and so that will be agreed to through this agreement. Again, we won't be drawing on that until we've approved the project for construction. So by adopting the Resolution 1160, authorizing the execution and delivery of construction and installment agreement, there's essentially three things that the board is doing. The board's acknowledging the good faith estimate of the debt, which is attached to the resolution. So basically, the good faith estimate goes through how much money we will need from the actual loan program. It also includes certain fees that may be associated with it, much like a good faith estimate when you buy a house or a car. The board has, second thing is the board has determined that entering into the installment agreement is in the best interest of the district, as it will provide the necessary funding for the cap. And then the third is the board approves the installment agreement and authorizes the board president, the general manager, or other designated officers to execute it with a maximum loan of $42.5 million. So because this has really no binding effect on us in terms of our indebtedness, but it does clear the path for us to be funded, and the agreement is ready. And as Rob said, we're locked into a rate, and they'll hold it for a little while. But we're at the point where the agreements are ready. They're waiting for us to sign the agreement, and so this resolution will allow us to do that. And so for that reason, staff recommends that the board adopt the attached Resolution 1160, authorizing the board president or the general manager to execute the installment agreement.
Any questions?
Yeah, I have, excuse my ignorance.
Go for it, sure.
The installment agreement, what is it? It's between the district and the State Water Resources Control Board. And is the State Water Resources Control Board, are they the ones that are going to, and they call it installment, give us pieces of money that are part of this loan? Is that?
No, I think the installment refers to the way that they generate the money, which is by bond sales. And so they issue bonds to the public. They borrow.
State Water Resources, yeah.
Yes, they borrow the money and then they give it to us as we construct the project.
Right,
Or they
that's,
don't give it to us, but they loan it to us.
yeah, that's what I said. So then this is just immortalizing the fact that what triggers those exchanges of money is your signature or other authorized district person. And and we're giving you the authority to do that. Is that the
What you're
purpose
giving,
of it?
yeah, what you're giving me or the board president, and I prefer the board president in this case, but in case he's not available, then I would be able to sign the agreement itself. This isn't in terms of making draws. Those are defined. The method in which those draws are made are defined, and it does give me authority as the district's representative to request draws.
Oh, but this is something different.
This is just the agreement that will give us that ability to draw on the loans.
And this is normal procedure, approved by legal and all that stuff.
Yes, so legal's been engaged.
I don't know.
Their legal and our legal has been engaged in this for over a year. And so we've come to the point where, and our bond counsel as well has been engaged in this. So we come to the point where all of the details have been worked out and put into the agreement. And so now the last thing to do is enter into the agreement.
Oh, and just as an aside, is this like the other loan? In other words, we have to pay the contractors first, and then we make a draw on the loan and we get reimbursed?
Yeah, it's a reimbursement.
And so there's a cash flow thing?
Yep.
Okay. Okay, thank you. I guess that's the question I had.
What happens if it's short?
They will allow us to amend the agreement afterwards. So we'll have to come back if we want to amend the agreement up.
At the same terms?
I believe so, yeah. I think they feel, and we feel, that we're close enough that an amended amount will be relatively small. And so they're dealing with billions of dollars. So I think, if you move up, 5%, it's not going to affect their overall funds.
You're talking about the 42.5 million.
Yeah, just
Oh, okay.
didn't know how complex
Up.
the change would be. And then, I guess, is there an advantage to entering to it now when we don't need it?
Well, as I said, they lock in, they get to this point, they lock in the rates that are available. I think they can only hold that for so long. So
And
if
they
we-
need this document in order to lock in the rates?
Yes. They need us to commit to the agreement. Yeah, to lock in the rates.
Any more questions? Okay, we need a motion, please.
Polly makes a motion.
Second?
We got a motion and a second. Any more discussion? Then roll call, please.
Director Holcomb?
Yes.
Director Johnson?
Aye.
Director Roberts is absent. Director Balch?
Aye.
Director Van Weerden?
Yes.
Motion carries 4-1.
Then we move on to item number 7, I. Consider draft joint exercise of power agreement, JEPA, and ground lease for CAP. For information, Bob.
Yeah, again, Rob touched on this. We wanted to bring it to your attention that these are the agreements that are between the Water District and the Sand District to develop and operate the CAP. And so we've been working on these. Initially, we started back in 2020, mid-2023, and with the belief that these were going to be needed to be completed for the installment agreement to be issued. But it turned out that the state agreed to waive that requirement and require it before any money is drawn from the program. So we are working towards completing these agreements. So as you know, developing and operating the CAP is a collaborative effort between the Water District and the Sand District. Some key elements of shared responsibility and benefit in developing the CAP is the coordination and collaboration of both agencies and the AWPF design decisions. And so we've been working through this without an agreement, and it's been working okay, but we do want to have something in place so that it covers in the event that there is a conflict in the decisions of the AWPF design. We don't think that there will be, but just would be nice to have an agreement. It also, some of the responsibilities also include requiring necessary staff time from each agency during design, construction, and startup. So there's going to be a lot of staff time required in these three processes. We're in the middle of the design, but then once we get the design complete and get a contractor on board, we're going to have to deal with the construction of the project, which is, as Rob said, around 2 years of construction. So there's going to be a lot of issues that may arise during that period, and then finally, once the project's done, there's going to be a period where we're going to need to start up and debug the equipment and logic and all of those things, and it's going to require lots of coordination between the two agencies. And then finally, it's understood, but again, it needs to be in an agreement that CVW is responsible to implement and pay for the cost to construct the CAP. Once the project's complete and it's being operated past startup, it's going to be operated by CSD staff and on behalf of CVWD. Again, this has been the operating understanding of how the CAP will be operated, and so we've been developing the necessary agreements to state that, and we'll continue to develop a third agreement that I'll talk about in a minute along those lines. It's also agreed that potable water will be delivered to Carpinteria Valley Water District for storage, and looks like got cut off in Carpinteria groundwater basin. CVW will also be responsible for operations and maintenance costs for the CAP program, or for the CAP AWPF in particular. That includes labor, consumables, things like chemicals, membranes, and UV light bulbs that all have a fixed life and they will only last for so long. So we have to schedule money and put money aside. So in the period when we do have to replace those elements, that we have the money. And then finally, utilities.
Can I ask you a question about operation and maintenance?
Sure.
Because I recall something that was already negotiated. I thought we already signed it. So the CVWD, we're paying for these, and we have adequate controls or final say on the details and what gets indebted.
Yes, so in the JEPA, there are processes that are described in which the water district will be involved in the decisions on like replacement and how to operate the project, you know, what types of things to do to the project, you know, so there will be a plan and what to budget for the project each year. There will be a committee of both CSD staff members and water district staff members, and they'll have to come up with an annual plan on what needs to be done with the plant, what the dollars are going to be for the plant.
Okay, so it won't be like cater treatment
No,
that we get handed
No,
a
we
bill.
we took that lesson seriously, and we considered it quite a bit in developing the framework of the JEPA.
Oh, okay, thank you.
So with the project, there are 3 agreements were identified that will be needed. The first is the ground lease. This will just simply allow the construction and existence of the AWPF on CSD property. And so we have the layout of the AWPF, including some pipes and tanks. And so we know what the footprint is. So we'll use that to define what the ground lease is. And the ground lease is a fixed period of time. And it's 30 years, and we did push back on that item to try to see if we could extend it. And the place we landed was, okay, you know, at the end of 30 years, we want sort of the first right of refusal to renew that lease. We don't want it to just automatically terminate and then suddenly we have to move all of our equipment. So that's contemplated. It really is more contemplated in the JEPA than it is in the ground lease. The ground lease is deferring much of the terms to the JEPA, and that was kind of the design, was let's put as much of the term into the JEPA and leave the ground lease sort of neutral. The second agreement is what we're talking about, the JEPA. It formalizes the roles and responsibilities between the 2 agencies of the AWPF project. And then the final agreement is what we're calling the operations agreement. It's referred to in the JEPA multiple times. And the reason why we broke out this third agreement was that there are a lot of things that we won't actually know for a while until we finish the design, till we have some staffing plans. So we have some things to develop before we can even start to build out this operations plan. And so some of the questions that were originally identified in the JEPA we realized we just don't have enough information at this point to make those terms, so we pushed it off into the operations agreement. We would like to get the operations agreement into final form before we actually receive the bids and are faced with the decision to either authorize the bids or not. So it looks like that's a reasonable timeline. We have the design engineer working on a new updated staffing plan now that we have kind of a relatively set design for the AWPF. We also are looking closely at some of the other costs that are likely to come up with the AWPF that we didn't have certainty on. But for now, what we're trying to get approved is the operations agreement was not identified in the SRF agreement. So we think we have some leeway to hold off on that one, but we do want to have the ground lease and the JEPA agreement in place before we have the operations agreement in place. So for the purposes of securing our ability to get at those loan funds. As I said, status, we've been working on the JEPA and the ground lease since late 2023. Both of our agency councils have reviewed both of these documents and have had lengthy conversations about what is acceptable to each agency and what's not. We have looked at it in the committees, less the ground lease. The ground lease was sort of simpler, and I think we got to the end of that in 2023, but we've been more recently looking at the JEPA in this year's committees. We feel like we're pretty close, if not there, on the JEPA. We do have one more item we're still working on, but we anticipate that we can resolve it. So the schedule is today we're kind of daylighting it, and we'd like to shoot for October 8th, but if we can't make October 8th, then we'll bring it back on October 23rd for consideration. So it's for information. If you have any questions or comments, I'd be happy to entertain them.
I have a question. I thought I remembered that originally when we started having these meetings, especially between the sanitary district, the water district, and the city of Carpinteria, that the lease of the land was going to be kind of a token.
Yes, there's no. It's a no fee lease. Yeah.
Oh, okay, that's still in place. Oh, that's good news. And the other thing is the lifespan of the recycling plant is 50 years, isn't it?
That's been what we've been operating on. Yeah.
And a lot of times that it turns out that, oh, this was, this expired 20 years ago and it's still going, so it'd be nice to have, what is the option if we have a 30-year lease? Then
Yeah, and
you're
we
not
put
going to move it, are you? You're just,
no. Well, we pushed back on that 30-year lease, and the CSD attorney essentially said, by state law, you can't have a lease more than 30. Public agency can't have a lease for more than 30 years.
oh, really? Oh, that's interesting. So, yeah.
So
'cause
the
you never know
idea
future.
is to make sure that we have the opportunity to renegotiate a new lease in 30 years.
They'll renegotiate. Yeah. So, what was it gonna be? Oh, yeah, because you never know what the future holds. That stormwater capture or desal or re-engineer it to desal or something like that. As technology changes. But okay, thank you for answering those questions.
Our council agreed that you can't have more than a 30-year lease?
There were some, I think in the end, our council did agree. There was some discussion back and forth, but
So didn't agree initially?
but I think
So-
they worked together to come to that conclusion.
And there's no opportunity for an easement?
Yeah, they weren't interested, their attorney in particular was not interested in easement. They wanted a lease.
Yeah, I guess like the scary part is, right, 30 years, they could be like, no, that's it. And there's nothing we can do about it.
Yeah, and we did add that language that we reserve it would follow the dispute resolution process outlined in the JEPA if they did not want to renew the lease.
Right, but we own the pipelines, so they got nowhere to go. Just that you know, in private industry, when you go over 30-year leases, it becomes a purchase. That's why everybody's stuck on the 30 years. But, you know, you should be able to manage a couple more 10-year options. I mean,
Yeah, I'm looking for input if you have it.
well, ask for two additional 10-year options that were there. So.
Yeah, maybe expanding those 5s to 10s, or,
Yeah, or normally you go three 10s and you add two more 10s, it gives you
Yeah,
50.
I think there is an option to renew every 5 years
Yeah.
in the CHEPA. But we could ask for 10.
Well, ask for 5 10s and we're done. So.
30 and 2 10s, right?
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah,
30
that's
and
fine,
10s,
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the dispute resolution just goes to binding arbitration, which
Yeah,
they're gonna be
no.
like, well, we
Yeah,
we need the
you
land,
really got to
and that's
think
gonna
in
be it.
today's world, push comes to shove, you know, you know, you have to look at it like that, but I think it's going to be a successful cooperation.
Who knows? We might be the same agency in
Right.
30 years.
Well,
It's true.
Kay should be around.
Right.
Casey will be around, we will.
The only thing I wanted to add is that I thought it was I remember when we did it, but it was a really good idea to separate out the operations agreement. Hands down, it's a different animal.
All right, no more questions, then we'll move on to item number 7J. Consider the GFOA Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting for Annual Comprehensive Financial Report. Bob?
Yeah, this is in your packet. This is kudos to the accounting department and Norma for leading that effort. We produced a CAFR this year and were acknowledged by GFOA, and I don't know if you want to say any words on that. Norma?
No, I'm just saying that it's, as the letter states, it is the highest form of recognition in government reporting, and it's a significant accomplishment. So as Bob mentioned, just thank you to our accountants, Lori and Emily, who helped put it together.
So
It's-
this is a big deal. I mean, there's a huge amount of work involved
Definitely.
in sending this forward and sending it in, and it says a lot about the quality and the detail that has come out of this team in order to get that award. So
Yeah, just financial
congratulations.
transparency. So
Incredible.
we
Very-
submitted the report in December and were notified in August. So it is a
Kudos.
huge achievement.
Well done.
Congratulations.
Well, I know you do well, and I did read an article, though, about how a lot of these awards, you know, like, you pay money and they give you the award, and I just hope you don't have to put too much work into it, because, you know, you're excellent, we don't need an award.
Yeah.
Anyway,
But it makes it a better product.
Yeah, and
They bring back, you know, tips and different things to do to even improve it for the next, so that the document even gets improved the following year.
well, that's good.
So,
man.
yeah.
Yeah, and we are not required to produce a comprehensive annual financial review or CAFR review. It's a choice for financial transparency. It makes understanding the finances of the district easier for the public.
And it's
Right.
on the district's website if you wanted to see a copy of it. So.
Plus, it also benchmarks you against your peers, so it's kind of nice. But actually, you're the one on top, so. All right, well, congratulations. Number 8, Director's Report. 8A, Administrative Committee meeting, September 18, 2024. There was Polly and myself. There was no reportable action on that one. And then we move on to item number 8B, Comb Board meeting, August 26, 2024. Polly?
Thank you. I'll just kind of go over the highlights. Some of this I've reported out in different committee meetings, but in the Oak Tree Committee, it was announced that they had our annual Oak Tree report out, which I have right here if anybody's interested. And on the Operations Committee meeting, we approved some purchases, including a new boom around the north portal. I talked about this before because the teams are up there at least twice a month trying to fix what has been broken. So we're going to repurpose the older boom to another area of the lake and put a brand-new one around the north portal, hoping that it doesn't get vandalized. If it gets vandalized, then we have another problem. And point 5 on the committee appointments, I was reelected to the chair the previous month, and we decided to keep all of the committees the same. We normally do one big and one small on each committee, and this means that I'll be keeping administrative committee and also operations committee. We had a fourth quarter review for the financial year. All is on track. That went very well. In keeping with that, for the master contract renewal and Warren Act Trust Fund long-term planning with Santa Barbara County, Edward represented us in this meeting to show how the funds will be used going forward. We approved that. Good news also with respect to CARP down here, we approved the proposed second addendum, which would be phase 3 of the construction work that we've been doing down here. Again, I talked about this before, that Joel felt that everything was going so smoothly, if we could kind of keep the momentum going. And I guess what we also heard in just kind of forming going into the last board meeting, we're almost done with phase 2, and so we'll be starting phase 3 with the goal being that finally all of the 1950s valves will be replaced, and these are valves that were stuck open. Not great. So, also we continue to work on the winter storms, and especially with the Laurel debris basin removal construction project. And we're working, that is FEMA eligible, we're working with FEMA on that. I talked about approving the new boom. Let's see. On the operations division, it was a very, very high month. They had 144 dig alerts. And that's kind of the big one there. On the next meeting, this past Monday, we approved a change order to the El Jarro Creek fix with Peter Lapidus for $50,000. The reason being that they discovered that there was a huge amount of willows that were creating fish impediment and that needed to be removed. We finished an agreement on right of entry with the landowner, and the addition to the already work that we approved in the previous budget will be ongoing. It's not additional money for the member units. It'll be taken out of the current fish budget where we had some extra funds, and so that's good news. Also on fish, I've reported a lot because of the water in the lake being so high and the streams coming down. There's fish everywhere, and that's great news, but we're seeing poaching now that we haven't seen before, more than we haven't seen before. So we're working with CDFW to try and get a better control on that, and so that's a shame, but that's what we're seeing. Also, there was hosted by the Bureau of Reclamation, a value meeting up in Buellton with the member units and other various parties to discuss Term 24, which is moving the fish up above the dam, which has not happened ever before, and getting them back down. And this comes after the State Water Board approved an order that the Bureau had to find a way to get the fish going up over the dam and then back. So it was a brainstorming exercise. Janet and Tim attended, and that it was just more of a kind of an icebreaker to get everybody talking about it, what they had to do. And stay tuned on that. Also busy with the carp fixes again down here. Do you have any more you want to add to that?
No.
Okay. And I think that evaporation is still going great. The pan is still covered for the wildlife. Excellent water quality that we have, most excellent water quality we've seen in a long time. And that's kind of the highlights. Annual monitoring report is going to, for this year, is going to try to be done early so that we can use it for the Term 24 project that is going on. Anything else that you have heard? Okay, that concludes my reports. Thank you.
I have a question.
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit of what they're talking about, moving the fish up and around the dam? Do they
Bureau
know,
tried-
is it gonna be like a trail that they make
They
for
don't
them?
know. Everything was thrown at the board like a cannon.
Uh-huh,
A
okay.
cannon? But that was actually, I mean, a fish cannon.
Oh,
Everything it's very preliminary. Basically, the history is that this has been in discussion for a long time, but the Bureau fought it, that they said this is a ridiculous idea, we don't want to do it, and they appealed it and they lost. And so since they lost, they had to corral everybody together to say, okay, how are we going to actually put this operationalize this? So there was a powwow up at the Buellton, I think Marriott up there, where they had to begin to put together some ideas and brainstorming. And Tim brought all of his notes from the meeting, 15 years ago to see if that would help and to refresh some of the people's memories, some of whom were at that same meeting. But time's out. They have to do it. It's basically, they have to find a way to do it. And it really is, anything will be considered.
hot air balloons.
Yeah, that's why I said, stay tuned, because they're looking at everything that you could possibly.
Trucking.
I know.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, no, well, good question, and early in the, but to your point, they're taking all ideas.
I'll take the poachers for catch and release. I think that would work.
We're trying.
Back down, right?
And back down, and back down, and back down. Yeah.
All right.
Never a dull moment, thank you.
Thanks, Polly. That was educational, nothing else. Shirley, you got CCWA special board meeting September 13th.
Yes, a CCWA meeting, just about the only, it was a special short meeting in two different locations, and we approved the temporary Warren Act contract for another 2 years. And that's the same thing I was talking about last report for the meeting, too.
Okay, thank you. We move on to item number 9, General Manager's Report, and 9A, the financials.
Before we move on, given the time, maybe we ought to approach the reports with just any questions.
I'm fine with that. Any questions on,
Nope.
on A, B, C, and D?
I had one super quick one. The 12-month read cycle losses?
Is that on the
The water supply report?
water supply? Okay.
I assume it's just a typo.
Oh, the first sheet. Yeah, let me see. I think, is this what you're talking about?
Yep.
Yeah.
Just a typo, right?
Yeah, that's a calculation. It's an automated spreadsheet that Meso's been working on, and you caught our first error.
So close.
Particularly after what Mesa was talking about, so no. Okay, any other questions on any A, B, C, or D items? Then we'll move on to consider dates and items for the agenda for the Carpinteria Valley Water District Board meeting of October 9, 2024 at 5:30 p.m. Carpinteria City Hall, 5775 Carpinteria Avenue, Carpinteria, California, and we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
All right, thank you.
There was a lot of work today.
Recording stopped.
9:30.
You skip one meeting and